Well, welcome to our members, to those in the audience, and all viewing the meeting remotely. To members virtually, please ensure that your video is streaming and that you can be seen throughout the duration of the meeting. I'd like to announce that the Area Technology Update and National State Association of State Boards of Education High School Transformation Network update will be heard by the full board and will be considered under review at the end of today's agenda. We just decided that both of these, the content in both of these areas were interrelated and of great interest to the full board. So why not just have it all together? And so that's how that will be handled. We will have a new member joining us, at which time I will ask the board to be in recess so that Mr. McKinney can be greeted and sworn in. Then we will reconvene and begin our agenda where we are. So we're so grateful to have a new member join us and look forward to introducing him. So at this point, I'll ask Dr. Jones to please call the roll.
Holly Bloodworth.
Here.
Mike Borchers. Justin Pate. Julie Powell.
Present.
Randy Poe.
Present.
Sharon Porter Robinson.
Present.
Lee Todd.
Present.
Steve Trimble.
Here.
Diane Woods.
Present.
Lou Young.
Present.
Lawrence McCroby.
Present.
Preston Graham.
Present.
Secretary Jamie Link.
Here.
President Aaron Thompson. Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you so much. Included on today's agenda is a dedicated public comment segment. The segment is limited to 10 speakers at a maximum of 3 minutes each. Do we have any speakers? Thank you. We'll move on then to internal board business. That will include the summary of minutes for February 5, 2025 regular meeting, February 6, 2025 KBE regular meeting, and March 20, 2025 KBE Awards Committee. They were distributed to you in advance. Are there any corrections to any of those minutes? If not, then I'd like to have a motion that these minutes be approved.
I so move.
Thank you, Ms. Bloodworth. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you so much. We have a motion and a second. I'll call the question. All in favor of approving these minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thanks so much, Board. The minutes are approved. Next, we'd like to call on Diane Woods, the chair of our awards committee, to introduce the recipient of the 2025 David Karam Award for Excellence in Education Policy.
Thank you, Chair Robinson. David Karam served on the Kentucky Board of Education from 2009 through 2016. He served for 33 years in the Kentucky State Senate and as chair of the Senate Education Committee. During his tenure in the Kentucky General Assembly, Karam championed the passage of the Kentucky Educational Reform Act, KERA, and led the efforts for the 4% school levy tax levy by school districts. The Karam Award for Excellence in Education Policy is given in the spring of each year to a state policymaker, education leaders, or citizens who have made notable state-level contributions to the improvement of Kentucky's public education system. The criteria for the award includes demonstrated leadership in policy development, passage or implementation resulting in increased educational opportunities for students, improved educational, post-secondary, or workforce outcomes for students, and our increased capacity of teachers or school staff to better meet the academic, social, or emotional needs of Kentucky students. Board and Chair, on behalf of the Awards Committee, I would like to share that the committee met on Thursday, March 20th, and determined that candidate number 4 best met the criteria of the award. Therefore, with your permission, I would like to move approval of candidate 4 as a recipient of the 2025 Karam Award for Excellence in Education Policy, and ask the chair, which is Chair Robinson, for the board's approval to recognize candidate number 4, at the board's upcoming June regular meeting.
Thank you so much, Diane. I understand that every award category this board gives is competitive.
Yes.
Intensely so. So I appreciate the work of the committee and Chair Woods for bringing forth their recommendation. It is offered as a motion on behalf of the committee, therefore it does not require a second. All those in favor of approving bringing forward candidate 4 for recognition at the June regular meeting, please say aye. Aye. Are there any opposed? Thank you so much. Looking forward to recognizing award recipients. It's great fun for us, so inspiring and affirming. So we've got more coming.
Can we thank, Chair Robinson, excuse me, can we thank the whole committee?
Oh, I
Because
did.
it was-
I do intend to thank the whole committee. Let's see, that's Lou and
Julie, Paul?
Julie.
Yeah,
You guys,
was a tough
I
one.
have to say, I was
yeah.
when I was talking to Chair Woods at the committee, she said, "You know, we spend hours on these applications." I said, "Well, that's great because there's so much talent out there, but we do understand that we are honored to have awards that folks see as in their scope and acknowledging their work." So thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Our next item is the consent agenda, which you might see as pretty formidable. It requires a vote, and it consists of content of items that the staff feel might be considered as a whole. They have identified items on the consent agenda as those that are non-controversial and routine in nature. Consent agenda items D through X are requests for certification of the noted administrative regulations to avoid expiration of those regulations. All of these regulations are currently in effect and nearing their 7-year expiration date. Staff have reviewed these regulations and determined they should be certified to remain in effect. If regulations are not certified, they will expire and become ineffective. At this time, does any member wish to have any consent item agenda moved to the regular discussion action agenda?
Madam Chairman, I just have a quick question. I don't think it requires
Yes.
anything coming out, but I see where there's required academic standards for reading and writing and math. But is the science one still in force, or is it, so it doesn't have to be certified now?
Yeah, Commissioner?
Okay,
I believe so. Is that correct? Yes.
okay. And the last question, just for my information, is I see a professional development, leadership, and mentor fund. What is that? Professional development, leadership, and mentor fund.
So we've got staff coming forward to help us
didn't
with
mean to-
that.
Oh,
Thank you for the question, Dr. Todd. I'll let Sarah update specifically what has been submitted to you today.
Wait, Mickey, your mic's not on.
There it is.
There you go.
Oh, no.
I think it,
Hey, it's on now.
okay, is that better?
Yes.
All right, wonderful. Thank you. I apologize for that. Just wanted to communicate, Sarah can speak to the specifics, but that fund is actually unfunded, but we want to make sure that it continues in case the legislature would like to contribute funding to that important.
And the purpose of the regulation is to provide guidelines for the programs and activities that qualify for the fund, including the application and approval process. And for the regulation, only one thing was changed, which was to update the name of the state assessment, which was previously the Kentucky Core Content Test, and now will just state statewide assessment.
Okay. Yeah, I've just been interested in funding of professional development and wondered how big that pool was, and it's,
And I
Like
do
to see
want to
it be-
clarify, you did not intend to hold it from the consent
no,
agenda.
no, I
He-
just wanted
but
that
to
for
raise the
information. I'm fine
questions.
with the consent
Great.
agenda.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? If not, I would ask a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second? Thank you, Julie. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Please say nay. Motion carries. Thank you very much. Pardon me. Our next item of consideration, that was quite a bit of content in the consent agenda. Let's see, we've got assignment of committees. The Kentucky United We Learn. And accountability framework. Our commissioner has been on the road in every corner of the state and with every group that will sit still long enough to listen, explaining the work of our local communities on the concept of accountability. Dr. Fletcher.
Thank you so much, Chair Robinson. And before we get started talking about the town halls and the framework itself, I'd like to say that the town hall experience was phenomenal for me personally. I also would like to thank our staff. You know, basically our format, we started with the commissioner doing an introduction, and I would typically stay within a few minutes of my time limits, typically, not always. But then we'd also move into having our Division of Innovation and Sarah Snipes and her group to talk about vibrant learning and what did that look like. That was a great portion. I want to thank you. That's in part of our OCIS and Kelly Foster's office. So thank you for the work that was done there. Then we went into what I would say were the stars of the show, and that's our districts. Our districts talked about the not only the vibrant learning, but also the local accountability systems that were going on. They showcased students. They showcased different areas that was different things that was going on within their district of what exactly was their community asking for, what were they giving them, talking about their profiles of a graduate, profiles of a learner, and a lot of great work. But one of my favorite slides came from Woodford County, and the reason for that, outside of the pictures of students, and you know, Preston, yeah, I didn't take Preston's input on this one, but again, it was one of my favorite slides. And it showed all the logos of different districts that were involved in helping Woodford County collaborate to build their local accountability model. And if memory serves, Clark County, Rowan County, Johnson County, Logan County, Shelby County, maybe even Kenton County, a part of that. I'm not sure about. I think so. So if you put pins on the map, that's all across our Commonwealth. Yes. Of a district that's centrally located, reaching out to other districts with a lot of similarities, also some differences, to say how can we work together to build a local accountability system that brings vibrant learning to our kids. And to me, that is one of the key components of what we're doing here as part. We talk about our three pillars. I hope you saw the Spectrum News today, and then also too some information we've talked moving forward is our three pillars of vibrant learning, innovation, especially when it comes to accountability, and collaboration among districts and communities. I think that what we saw within the districts, they were really truly the stars of the show. Second star of the show was Dr. Jennifer Stafford. She actually went over our Model 2.0 and then took input. And you're going to see some changes today on after doing 9 town halls.
9 town halls.
9 town halls on the input that we received and some of the changes that we're looking at and proposing in 3.0. So again, very excited for that. So if we could, next slide, please. As far as the town halls, we had over 600 individuals in 9 town halls. And you can see the breakdown, the data, 75% were educators. We also had 7% that were in community that identified as their community members, 2% business, 1% legislative and government. So we had legislators that were asking questions and showing support. Also family members. There were 14% that included partners and students that didn't identify which category they fell into. So what we were seeing is typically if we had 30 people to sign up for a town hall, we'd have 60 to show up. So in my understanding in the past, a lot of times when we'd have 60 to sign up, only 30 would show up. We'd have about half. So it was a great opportunity. We listened intently, and I appreciate for those of you that made it to those town halls, thank you for that. I think it was something that was very enjoyable to each. Next slide, please. Some of the common topics as we went through the town halls, first and foremost, were what are the assessments? What are the assessments that we're giving? What are the changes in assessments? We talked about the interim assessments was a common theme, though. What did that look like? And Dr. Stafford will talk about the change that we made around interim assessments. But where does science, where does social studies, where does writing fall? Or, more importantly, what type of assessments would the local community, what would they be giving? For example, is it centered around their profiles of a learner as it looks at defenses of learning? Of that nature versus are there going to be some assessments that we administer that people could opt into? So a lot of questions about assessments. But again, going back to the local accountability piece, the discussions there around local accountability was things that was just phenomenal. To see what districts are doing, how they're working with their community members to come up with these local accountability topics. Some of the questions that came up was, okay, how tight do we want to be as far as parameters, guardrails for local accountability without stifling the creativity of the local community to say we still have ownership in this, but still yet giving some rubrics and guidelines around this is what a local accountability model could look like to give direction. Vibrant learning experiences were a topic. Of course, we pointed back to our Cool Council and the definition that our Cool Council gave on vibrant learning, but also, too, realizing that there's an opening there for districts to define vibrant learning experiences in their own district. Social studies and science were 2 top topics. As a matter of fact, in the beginning, our social studies teachers were all about. We had some great input from social studies teachers. As a matter of fact, one of the things that's in this current model we're using some social studies grades 3 through 10 more from an instructional piece, and Dr. Stafford will explain more about that here in a little bit. Student growth. Of course, change versus growth. This was the topic that was probably next to the assessments, probably one of our top topics that we need to move from change to student growth. Where did you get the individual child and where did you take them? Not only in math and reading, but also growth within the local accountability. What does that look like in the profile of a learner? So a lot of comments about student growth. Equity concerns. We want to make sure that every single student has opportunity and access to vibrant learning. So how do we make sure we're trying to ensure that as we move forward? So a lot of questions that came up about that. Inclusion of special education. One of my favorite stories out of one of the town halls dealt with, I think it was Shelby County, talking about the vibrant learning experience and an assessment that was given. It was a performance assessment for their FMD students. And they were learning about processes and doing some practical things. And one of the things that they did in a defense of learning was they produced ice cream. They made ice cream for their parents. And there wasn't a dry eye in the place. When you start talking about students making ice cream and sharing that with their parents who were in the defense of learning, it was phenomenal. So again, really, it's one of those things when you walked out, I was so proud to be a Kentucky educator, to see things like that going on in the Commonwealth. Then, of course, federal requirements. What are the federal requirements? And, of course, we know that, where are federal requirements today versus federal requirements in a couple of months? Where are we now? What buckets are we filling? and of course, implementation timeline. And talking about the fact that if this is passed in 2026, in January 2026 or February, districts just can't flip the switch and be ready in the fall. There has to be a pilot phase. There has to be, especially when it comes to local accountability, there has to be a pilot phase, an expansion phase, and then how do we make sure that this is sustained throughout? So again, that was some common topics that went across the town halls. Next slide, please. So with that being said, being a part of the town halls and being in different parts of the Commonwealth was phenomenal. Even the late night trip to Eddyville and back in one day, that was exciting. That was exciting. But once we got there, Christian County presented there and talked about, and I'll share this. One of their students, as part of their learning experience, works for a drone company and is work-based learning. He's having companies from around the world to call him during class, said he has to step out of class and answer questions for these companies about their drones. And they don't know they're talking to a high school student. Others that we're seeing too. For example, the third grade student in Bullitt County, who has already written 2 books published on Amazon and is selling books. I'll also talk about an experience I had, and again, I could go on, but one other experience I had on Friday, I went to Madisonville, North Hopkins. They do the freight box challenge. You see the big freight boxes that come across on barges. They go in and frame up the inside of these boxes and make them into medical offices. And their very first one is sitting in Liberia. It is the medical office for that community. It was shipped to Africa, and it serves as their medical office. They're in the process of making a second one, and I actually got to sign this one because I did put one nail in it. So again, they gave that offer to us while we were there, Dr. Hargis and our team there. But this was the ag group. And I will say that I did step into a classroom and teach a little bit of trigonometry while I was there.
Nice.
But I was in an agriculture class, teaching trigonometry, building a box, a medical office that's going to be sent to Liberia. That, my friends, is vibrant learning, is making a difference on a global scale. And that's what's going on in a lot of our classrooms. And we could go on and on and on. So how do we build a framework, a local accountability framework that really promotes, not only promotes, but ensures that students have this type of experience? Maybe not sending a medical office to Liberia, but maybe building a house in their local community. Maybe doing something to the effect of helping change the agricultural experience within a community. So a lot of great things going on there. But again, that is what the local accountability piece is really about, changing the student experience so that it is meaningful and useful. So I'll stop there, and I'll turn it over to Dr. Stafford.
Thank you. And I just want to emphasize the success of the town halls. And Commissioner Fletcher was able to make it to every single one. We were able to hold all of them in person. And during January and February, we had some obstacles with snow and other emergencies and rain. So we were really pleased to be able to complete them all. We had a staff, mentioned Sarah Snipes in the District of Innovation, Karen Dodd and Susan Strange with all the work that they put into it. And then in the Office of Assessment and Accountability, we had members that supported the work. So we had a really good team of people that created a successful event. But as Commissioner said, the districts and their examples and bringing in the students' perspective in what they were doing was the piece that was most eye-opening for our town halls. So looking at the Framework 3.0, if we'll go to the next slide. We've had a bit of discussion about 3.0. We took 2.0 to our town halls and have made updates to that. We've had 2 years with the Kentucky United We Learn Council, and we've worked toward creating this framework. It's been an iterative process that we started in June of last year with the first prototype. Prototype 1.0, we would put that out, get feedback, and develop the second one. Put the second one out, more feedback with surveys, interviews, small groups, and We had 4 prototypes, and so far we've had 3 frameworks. So we've had a lot of input on these frameworks to where we are now. We met with the School Curriculum Assessment Accountability Group last week. The Kentucky United We Learn Council met Thursday of last week. They give us input on 3.0. And yesterday we got to have the discussion with the local Superintendent Advisory Council. So today we're meeting with you to talk about, again, 3.0. The next slide. So let's talk about first the difference between 2.0 and 3.0. So as we gathered input from the town halls, and we also had meetings with the boards of directors of the local education co-op. As we would go out to the town halls, we would also meet with the superintendents of the education co-ops. So we had good discussions with them as well and input. So you're going to see some areas here that with the differences that came directly from superintendents. The first difference is districts now have the option to administer a state-developed or independently purchased the reading and math interim assessments. Now, you may recall in 2.0, we had in there that the districts had to move from their own local interim assessments that they are purchasing, for instance, MAP, STAR, iReady, that. We very quickly heard that they were not so interested in moving away from their own independently purchased interim assessment system because that they have their processes set up. They have data, the longitudinal data. They have their PLCs that are aligned to that. So they have some decision-making and processes built up. So very quickly we said, how about we make that an option? So in 3.0, the reading and math interim assessment system that would be developed by the state, that would be aligned to the summative assessment. Our vision is that the interim assessment system would be created by the same vendor that would produce our summative assessment, so that it would be a cohesive system. It would be seamless for the student to go from the interim assessments through the summative assessments, as well as be based on the Kentucky academic standards in reading and mathematics. The second change was we clarified that the science off-grade testing for the off-grades would be optional, so that districts could choose between the state-developed test or create their own authentic demonstration of learning. We had a good feedback from you as a board that was the desire for that to be an optional. So that was clarified and changed within 3.0. The K2 assessments we had from our superintendents mentioned that since we were developing that interim assessment system in reading and math, that it would be nice to have a K2 system as well, that because since they already have to do those screeners and that diagnostic information at K2, that having one system of assessments, and I'll use K2 assessments, but it's really more around screeners and around age-appropriate information that you would gather from young students like that. The other feedback that we have was that the graphic in 2.0 had 3 pieces in a puzzle. One that was a federal system, and the other 2 that we were trying to distinguish within the local system, the variances in that. So we had good feedback to say maybe we should update the graphic because we're distinctly talking about 2 systems. One for federal or state, as we heard a little more feedback that we should say state assessment system, and then a local assessment system. So you'll see that updated graphic.
And for specific, the input from the superintendents yesterday, and we also heard this in the school councils, instead of saying that one piece, and you'll see in a minute, saying federal assessment, saying that it should say state assessment with federal requirements. So it was something about some semantics there.
Yes.
So, thank you. I have been a DAC for a long time, so I just want to check my understanding on the K2 assessments. I'm really happy to hear you refer to them as developmentally appropriate. I understand that districts are giving them now as part of the reading and math work that's legislated. I see Mickey nodding yes. When you think about those assessments, however, in Framework 3.0, we have no intention of bringing those in any way into a mandate or accountability purposes under the new framework.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes. So the accountability, and we'll talk about the
I
accountability.
know you're on
bit deeper.
assessment now. I
Mhm.
totally
Yep.
get I'm breaching that, but
Yes,
that would be that would cause a lot of heartburn.
that's
if that
correct.
were the
It would,
case.
it would to the staff as well. The next slide, we have the framework, we also have the technical document. So the technical document was updated to align with those adjustments that I just mentioned. There was also added to the technical document a reference to exceptions for our English learners. At the current ESSA state law, there are a few exceptions for our English learners, and we've been approached by legislators wishing and desiring change to how we test for our English learners. And so a note has been added to that technical document for further exploration of those exceptions for our English learners. So just wanted to note that that's been added to the technical document. It's not in the framework because it's not part of the what is being proposed specifically at this point. Then the other areas in the technical document were enhanced for clarity's sake and understandability. So we wanted to make sure that it was really clear. So we really wanted to put some clarity in that technical document so there were no questions as to what's being discussed moving forward. So if we'll look at the 3.0, sure.
Hold on.
Can you go back to point number 2, explain that a little bit, because I'm not quite sure
Sure.
what that means.
So there's 3 exceptions in the ESSA right now. The first exception is the one that we're using currently, and that's where all first-year English learners, so first year into a Kentucky school, then those students do not test during that first year, 240 days. Then they go into assessment and accountability that second year. So Representative wanted to see if we could enhance that or extend that in looking at the second exception. So what the second exception does for us as a state, it would have those students that are first year EL be able to test. So they would test if they come in before the testing window, they would test in reading and math to set a baseline. So that baseline would be set. So then that next year, their second year, then they would test again, and they would get growth from and be included in the accountability system with growth between that baseline year and that first year. Then that third year, then the students would test again and be included in accountability for both growth and for proficiency, or what we would term status right now.
The first year, they would not count, correct? Yeah, I
In
mean,
the-
if I do the baseline, it's a baseline, but it's not going to count against me, correct?
That is correct.
Yes. Back on the first slide, I just had a question about how do we make sure that kids aren't double tested in the sense that a school district really likes their interim assessment, so they do that. Then they feel compelled to do our state test because they feel like it's going to help them do better on the state testing. Like, I would hate to see kids getting double tested like that.
Yeah, there's a pushback around a lot of testing, and we hear that from our schools, and we hear that from our parents as well as our students. And so I don't think there would be an incentive to have more testing. I think that the initiative is to reduce testing and to not have as much.
But schools like to do well on the state testing, so. I
So
don't
that's
know.
one incentive to move to the cohesive system that state developed. So yeah, you're hitting right on that benefit of having a one system.
And that's what we promoted, choose one or the other. We don't want students to have to take their MapStar iReady test, then turn around and take the the state assessment, the state interim also too, that we don't want that at all. And that's just, that's overkill for the student.
Right,
And we don't want to take them out of the classroom. So, at first, we were in 2.0, we actually had where they would have to give up their current interim assessments and take the state assessment. And then, of course, after finding out that a lot of districts want to keep that, then it would be, we made this change. I will say currently what you see with a lot of districts, they give their interim assessments 3 times a year. So a lot of times you'll see an assessment in the fall, in the winter, and then one also in the spring, but then they also have to take the state test. So another benefit, if they were to take the interim assessments that we provide, it's all aligned into one. So they would have the fall, the winter, and the spring, and it's just 3 assessments if they move to our interims, as opposed to using theirs of having the interims with the final data point, and then not having to take ours and theirs both. So there would be some benefit if they move to our interim also, as far as the number of tests they would get.
but would they be getting the same kind of data that's helping them drive instruction for their RTI groups from our?
Well, usually when you're looking at the spring test, it's toward the end of the year. So what would happen is, as we currently do that, they get their data back by August 1st.
But are
For
we
that
thinking
summative.
that the state-developed test will give them similar data to help them drive
The
instruction?
interim, yes, that's our goal, is to make sure the ones that are in the fall, and then also we want that to give the same level of data that they're getting now with their own interim assessments, so they can use their RTI, their MTSS systems in order to do the interventions that are necessary. So and part of our RFP would be, we want to make sure that in talking with superintendents and also DACs and others, that they're getting that same level of instructional information data so they can make those type of decisions for students in reading and mathematics as we move forward.
So, Steve, you
Well,
wanted.
I know there's a cost for iReady and MAP and those type of things. Will there be a cost for the state interim assessments?
Well, what we're proposing as of right now, and of course, once we take it across the river, it may look different, is if we're asking the state legislature if they take on the state interim assessments, that the state would pay for it.
Or
So-
if they choose to stay with their own, then the district would pay for
Pay
their
for
own.
their own.
Yeah.
independent, yes.
So let me just kind of anticipate some of what a framework that we bring to this, that you know well. One, maybe the most important, we want the assessments to be informative of learning. So we want to be able to articulate the aspects of our system that accomplishes that. It's a part of the learning system, even as it provides information for us to make kind of management decisions regarding accountability, productivity, identifying points of intervention and collaboration, next steps. We want it to be informative of instruction and informative of management kind of at the same time. But those are just different analysis of the basic information. How are our students doing? And are they learning in a way that we have documented well with high levels of technical integrity? So,
And to add to that, if I may, Chair Robinson,
yes,
is also
please.
from the local accountability piece.
Yes.
Is making sure that we're seeing the growth in there, because a lot of times we get stuck on growth being as part of the math and reading. So what does the growth look like as far as the competencies at different grade levels when it comes to their profile of a learner? So promoting that growth within that framework also too within the local accountability piece, and that we don't just, a lot of times when we talk about growth, we want to talk about math and reading, but to understand we're looking at growth for the whole student, including, and in some cases just as important, maybe not even more important, collaboration, communication,
problem-solving.
collaboration, problem solving, things of that nature.
So thank you. I know there's still more of the presentation to go, but before we move into the advocacy phase and some of the feedback in the slide deck, I really appreciate the careful listening that happened between Framework 2.0 and 3.0. I know there's still work to be done, but thank you for that. I have 2 guiding questions that I really more sharing with the board, because I think the 2 of you have heard me ask these questions before, but as we continue to move forward and we land on what I think eventually becomes the package that we will advocate for, I continue to ask myself, does our new system catalyze vibrant learning and portrait of a learner skills for every Kentucky learner. So that, while I so appreciate the technical quality questions and the diagnostic nature of it, we entered into this as a board saying that unless we change the assessment and accountability system, instruction has no chance of changing to a vibrant competency education kind of a system. So to what extent does our new system catalyze vibrant learning and portrait of a learner skills? And then secondly, continuing to press hard on the question, have we in fact reduced the amount of testing and time on testing when all is said and done? So those are two big considerations on the table from me. And I know you guys are working, the whole team, Kentucky United We Learn included, working toward those two big outcomes.
Sure. Okay, the next slide. Okay, so Framework 3.0 was developed with students at the heart so that the students have agency in their choice of what they are learning and developing, and with the goal that they have learning that's relevant to them, that it's meaningful and useful to them as a learner, whether they want to move on to college or a career after high school. So really engaging students in a variety of vibrant learning experiences, as Commissioner has mentioned, they're limitless. And so students have that agency to demonstrate their learning in a variety of ways that are meaningful and useful, that prioritizes what they, the skills that they, and the development that they want to be in. So that there is collaboration among districts and within communities, where communities prioritize what they hold schools accountable for, so that the local community can develop the goals and they have flexibility in their local accountability system to determine what they as a community want to see the outcome of their students. Developing supports in that collaboration across districts. As we've mentioned, districts are now working together to overcome challenges. One district may overcome challenges that another one is facing and could help that. So eliminating and moving away from that color rating, that comparison, moving toward more collaboration among districts. We had a superintendent at a Board of Education or a Board of Directors meeting he said, when I have my heart surgery, it doesn't matter if my heart doctor is my student or the student from the next county over. I want the best student and the best doctor operating on me. And that's what we want to influence our student experience so that they are developing these important skills and moving into and expanding those vibrant learning experiences and those opportunities in the access for those students. Looking at local innovation, engaging, again, communities in providing them the flexibility to customize and tell their story. There's good things happening in our districts, and our districts want to demonstrate that, and allowing the schools to define and tell their own stories about the values and reflecting the values of that local community. And then the last piece there within the framework would be framework feedback and support, where schools receive peer networks. So we bring together districts that give each other feedback on their local accountability system, and then bring out an external evaluator for feedback on the local accountability system, and looking to support the districts in that growth within their districts, and looking for exemplars so that we can share across the Commonwealth the good things that are happening, and we can connect people and lead to that customized support so that all students can grow. The next piece of the framework, this is where the most changes were On the left side, you can see the graphic that distinctly shows federal, and we had feedback again and we feel like in the next iteration, we'll have state accountability that meets federal requirements on that right-hand piece, then the local accountability indicators on the left. So two distinct systems. On the
Quick note on that, I had not thought about that language, as we moved away from this idea of state, but I'm really liking the way that hits the message, so hearty thumbs up.
Thank you.
And we actually received that input from a school council member and also from one of our superintendents yesterday.
nice,
So we had two different
nice.
groups that have that
Okay.
input.
Yeah.
So the right-hand side, the state, now I'll use state accountability indicators, there's been no change from 2.0 to 3.0. Still has reading and math summative, that individual student growth, grades 3 through 8, based on that summative assessment. Then the transition readiness, graduation rate, EL progress, and the climate and safety survey would remain unchanged within that state system. And you all know this, but I'll just reiterate the last bullet there is about science assessment. Current ESSA requires that science be assessed and reported once per grade band. So in the current proposal, those grades would be 5, 8, and 10. So that common assessment across the Commonwealth in science would be at 5, 8, and 10. Now, the left-hand side, that's where we see the changes, and we've really tried to be specific in the wording here so that it's clear. So the first one there's flexibility in administration and inclusion, and that's inclusion and local accountability. So the flexibility in administration and then the flexibility of whether or not these are included in the local accountability system. So again, that first one would be up to the local communities to meet and determine their priorities within the local systems. And we've heard many examples. We've heard about inclusion of co-curricular or extracurricular activities. We've heard about social emotional supports and including that, and the possibility of maybe doing some credentialing or micro-credentialing and including that. Again, that would be the collaboration with their communities to determine those local priorities. Then the flexibility in administration and inclusion, again, around the interim assessments. We just discussed whether or not the districts would opt into the state system or they would continue with their own. Then the off-grade testing, again, that is an option that the schools could have their own local demonstration of competency-based assessment system or more authentic learning demonstrations, or opt into the state system in those off grades. Now again, over on the right-hand side, those 3 assessments at the grade bands are required to be tested and reporting. So the local flexibility would be those off-grade testing. The last piece there is required, but with options. So the requirement would be that these pieces would be included in the local accountability system, but there's flexibility in how the schools would meet that. For vibrant learning experiences, again, there's a number that it's limitless on the vibrant learning experiences that could be offered to the students. They could start with just a percentage of students who are engaged in or have the opportunity to have vibrant learning experiences, or if they're more advanced in providing vibrant learning experiences, they could look at the quality, and give some type of quality rating and include it in the local accountability system. Now, the social studies and writing, I'll note for you, these are instructional tools for the content areas that are already being taught. So science, social studies and writing are part of the core curriculum. There are Kentucky academic standards in these 2 content areas. So the options here are that the schools could develop their own local authentic demonstration of learning in these content areas and include that in their local accountability system, or opt into some state tools. And those would be tools that would provide, again, input that would meet that instructional support and development in these content areas. The vision that we could look at for these would be that the state could develop a assessment system, a series of assessments, grades 3 through 10, and offer that to our districts so that it would be a seamless part of their curriculum, instruction, and assessments. They could, it could be offered in a computer-based online system. So when the school is ready to pull that down, then they could administer it along with their instruction, so that they would get back information from that, so that they have information based on those Kentucky academic standards, and be able to utilize that to see where the students are and include it into local accountability.
And I saw in the technical document that, as is required at the federal level, the required science at 5, 8, and 10 would be for reporting purposes only.
That's correct. So for the required with options into the local accountability, it's social studies and writing.
Okay.
Yes, not the science. So it would be an option for the local community, and if that was a priority for them, then they could utilize the science in their local accountability.
I was in a school yesterday that will be thrilled at that, at the way we've approached writing. It just, as I observed, it seemed to fit really well and nicely into their elementary school culture.
Wonderful, wonderful. And again, these components, again, would support the portrait of a learner and the skills and competencies there, because we are developing and we are preparing our students for a world that's unknown.
Right.
And we can't
Portrait of a
define
learner.
it. And so we have to put them in situations that they become engaged learners. They have that collaboration. They have the communication. So it's going to be important to foster that and put them in situations that that may be unknown, because that's the world that we are preparing them
You're
for.
here, Jennifer Stafford.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Back to Lou's original questions before we started. The only thing that I have a tough time wrapping my head around this is her question number 2, which is less testing versus more testing. And whether we call it federal, state, or local, I'm just seeing more. I'm not seeing less. So help me understand how this is less.
So I think the pieces that are already required by state law, we've talked about that. The K2 is already required by state law. Those interim assessment systems, they are required. We're just saying the state can develop a cohesive system that is aligned to the Kentucky academic standards. And then for your social studies and writing, we're offering instructional tools based to support the instruction and curriculum that is there, that's in our schools.
I think to add to that, districts can reduce some of their testing load if they take on our interim assessments. But if you're looking at the writing and social studies, if we're going to give assessments 3 through 10, now, again, we're looking at these as being instructional assessments for districts that they can opt. They would take the assessments or they could develop their own. There would be additional assessments there, but the purpose of those are a little bit different. So if you're looking at maybe, we did add into the footprint with you're looking at the off grades, if you will, with social studies and writing. So if the board is saying we should only do assessments at the grade band level, that would be back to more what we're doing now. But the social studies and writing, our approach to this has been more along the instructional side, but it would be more assessments for the social studies and writing. Now, they could do it at any different times during the year, and they don't have to do our assessments. They can have their own locally developed assessments on how it looks like too. So that is a bigger footprint on that part.
The last piece of the framework here is about the time frame and if you'll go to the next slide, about phasing in. Again, districts are in different places in the development of vibrant learning experiences, their local accountability systems. We've got many districts that are in the lead right now. However, there are some that are just now getting into considering local accountability systems. So we have to meet their needs and begin with a pilot phase, then expand that to other districts and eventually sustain that throughout the Commonwealth.
Have you thought about what will happen to annual accountability as we cross that bridge? We called it a bridge in '98, from between 1998 and 2000, where we gave ourselves a chance to say goodbye to one system and start anew. Is that too weedy? We're not there yet?
So with the, we have current laws that we have
Right.
to
We do have those,
meet
yes.
until we make that transition. And so, with the state or the federal, we would transition as we have many other times with the multiple changes that we've had over the years with accountability. So that state piece we would transition that as we have for the past decade. For local accountability, though, that would be the priority of our local districts. If they found that one of their indicators were not working for them, then they could meet and they could prioritize and adjust it. And that's the benefit of the local accountability system, because it's not it's not the state system. It's more nimble, if you will.
And they could, as from a local accountability system, they could have different indicators that are ready to go in year one, and then add other indicators into year 2 and year 3.
Yeah, going based on that, the question I have is, goes back to the science scores this year. And I think the hesitance of some of the ones to continue with their own playbook. So you think about this. If I'm doing well with my playbook, I don't have trust in the state system based on some of the things that occurred this year. And that's why they want local accountability to show other types of systems. So I think that's part of the pushback of these interim assessments. So I think when we say that we're going to have less, we're not going to necessarily have less in some places, because I'm not going to give up on my playbook if my playbook is very successful with lack of trust coming from, a statewide system coming out. So how do we assure that if we change with one RFP, that we're actually going to have the reliability and validity that we don't currently have, is with most systems see coming out? If I'm sitting in that seat, I'm doing very well. I don't trust the RFP process to deliver a valid and reliable assessment that they're going to create that others have had for X number of years. How are we going to overcome that? Because that's the reason why I see why they're saying, I want to continue iReady, or I want to continue whatever else it happens to be. How are we going to overcome that part?
I think the part that, first of all, the summative assessments are going to be required. That's still part of it. There's always that. We have issues with.
But that's why, given that purpose, that's why superintendents or others are saying, we want a local accountability, because we don't trust the current assessments to be measuring what we think they're measuring. That's the whole big debate up in my area right now, is you can look at these tests and see very poor scores, but you can see apprenticeships, and you can see work-based learning, and you can see dual credit expanding totally different than what we're seeing here. So they're saying, we don't trust this. We're going to continue with this playbook. So that's my concern. That's my concern with more versus less that I'm saying, especially with social studies and science being more added on. I'm just seeing an overload. I'm not saying anything about the flexibility and the other things. I'm just saying that when the answer or this feedback is crazy. Loose question that less is more. Okay, and I said it before, but that's kind of where I'm at.
I think one of the things that I'd like to see as we move forward with science is to put together a group of districts to look at, instead of having that one type of assessment that we give in science each year, like what we're giving now, is let's give districts an opportunity to develop, as part of their local accountability, a competency-based or performance-based system that has competency-based aspects within it, or has competency-based built on, the performance built on competency-based assessments.
Good
Let's put
science
some
testing.
and science testing. So let's start there with having some districts put together, and then as we move forward, as possibly some changes in the federal government, then all of a sudden, instead of having this required science assessment, then maybe we could even challenge what type of science assessment we give in the future. But I think we have to start off with building those local districts that are putting together those type of work. Like, I think you can see that type of work in Massachusetts and other places, that they're looking at these type of assessments. So with that being said, I think you're absolutely right. It's going to take some time. But, like, for example, if we ask districts how many want to do their interim assessments, do their own, if they want to do that, then we're giving them that option. If they don't trust what we're giving them, then we're giving them that option. But now we have some districts that will opt in, and as we move forward, our districts that opt in, hopefully, will see better results, see a benefit to moving to that aligned assessment, and then we'll have more and more to buy in. So it's going to take time. It's going to take a process. But I think that the more that, yes, this is the framework, but the more that we put districts to working in other ways to assess, I think is going to be very important as we move forward.
With anything you're saying, I just don't see us there without, I guess it goes back to this pilot phase that we're talking about.
Yes.
So it's like, I guess, help me out there, that in, let's say, 2026, are we only going to have like half, or everybody's in the pilot phase? That's what I'm not understanding. Are the
think that-
13 L3 districts are pilot districts, or is everybody the pilot coming up and we're just piloting the system? In 2026, is everybody taking the same test or not? I guess is what I'm saying. If this was passed.
Yeah.
Yes.
So the way that we've talked is that the pilot would be utilizing our local labs of learning, because they are the leaders in this local accountability system, and we have others outside the L3 group. But we would have a handful of districts that would move into this space in the 27 school year, if passed, right? So a handful of districts, and then expand that. You know, as you have more districts on board and online, then in, you know, the 27, 28 year, expand that to other districts, and continue to grow and expand that local accountability system.
So the validity, we would be looking at the validity starting in 2026 just as a baseline, and continue, but not 172 school districts are going to be taking the same assessments in 2026.
They would be taking the same assessments as it relates to the state accountability with federal requirements piece.
Okay.
But the local options.
The local
So the pilot is
Right.
really the only,
Is the local.
The local.
Yes.
Right.
The pilot is the local. Yes.
And in terms of advocacy, I like where Randy's head is in terms of thinking about how we move from where we are to pilot to expansion and then into sustainability. And I would just kind of want to say out loud that we should always keep open, exploring the affordances that the General Assembly could offer to allow waivers or exceptionalities to the opportunity for school districts that step up to be considered in both the pilot and expansion phases. I don't think it would be untoward of us to say, give us a little space, give these districts, these early adoption districts, some space to innovate. And the folks in the General Assembly with whom I've talked about this kind of work seem to, the idea of innovation in this space seems to resonate. And so I would either advocate for those affordances from the General Assembly or regulatory waiver options for us as a state board to give people the opportunity to prototype, validate, add technical quality to the work. It just takes time to do that. So,
And from the local accountability piece, I think that's where having the districts work together with looking at rubrics to analyze the
Yeah.
local accountability model, but also having that third party to come in to say, this, based on these rubrics, this is what this system looks like. And
Well, and that's where validation, to Randy's point, will occur, is through the peer review process,
Yes.
through the sharing of data, through a collaborative, probably improvement sciences approach. A lot of ways to go into program evaluation in such a way that we do ask and answer the technical quality questions. But again, that takes time.
sure.
It does.
And it'll also
Okay.
take money for these pilots to be
Well, thank you. That little question will come up sooner rather than later. And we are continuing to develop the technical manual, so to speak. The RFP is kind of in a work in progress, and yeah, we will have a we will have a price tag. And I suspect we're going to have some advocates there with us saying this is the price that's worth paying, rather than continuing to pay out of another pocket for tests that give us nothing but data that makes headlines for a few weeks, but does not support the kind of learning that we want for our students. Innovation is not free, and there's some risk here. But it's all we're moving in the direction that we feel represents a much more vibrant, impactful, meaningful learning experience for our students, rather than spend the same money to get what we've always got that we're not quite satisfied with. So I really think we have to keep returning to those legitimate questions around cost, the angst and anxiety of change. Because, I mean, there are lots of times I think about changing my kitchen, but cost and living without one kind of stop me sometimes. So it is, I think we have to embrace the developmental aspects of this as a part of what we must endure. And if we're going to succeed in making progress toward an admitted ambitious goal.
And keeping it in front of us at all times, the goal here is to change the student experience.
Yeah.
The goal is to change the student experience. If we come back in 5 years and the students are doing the same things in the classrooms, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of great things going on. I've witnessed to that already. But if we can't expand that so that all students have that same type of opportunity and access to these type of experience across the Commonwealth, regardless of zip code, then this work is not what it's intended to be. I mean, we want to change the student experience and making sure they have these type of opportunities as they move through. I was sharing with Dr. Todd, I was in a school district, I was at Pikeville Independent, as a matter of fact, and those students that graduate from Pikeville Independent, they usually have anywhere from 6 to 8 people that go straight into, and it's a small district, relatively small district, that go into an engineering school, whether it be in UK or Louisville or Wake Forest or other places that I think even Purdue is one of the ones that they were talking about too. But that's the kind of experience we want those students also to have, that high level of learning, that high level of if that's their desire, we want to make sure we give them the absolute best we can. It also goes back to make sure we recruit and retain quality educators too. And that's a side note. That's a very, I shouldn't say a side note, that's foundational to what we're doing here too. So again, at the end of the day, how are we changing the student experience as we move through with this?
So we've
I
gotten a
have
little.
one.
Oh,
Diane
sorry.
first.
Yes, Diane?
Okay, what level of support is there going to be for districts, small districts that may not have the level of expertise in their central offices or their support for teachers to see that, to get them ready to even go into a pilot phase?
I think the first level of support comes from fellow districts and also in your co-ops. We have co-ops that are already working on this with groups to give that type of support to help them develop local accountability. So we already have our co-ops working together to make this type of work happen, but also, too, for us to help identify districts to work together. And then, too, what support can we provide also? So it's layers of support, whether it be the co-op, districts that are similar that can work together. I often use, in talking with Menifee, with Tim Spencer, often works with Montgomery County to make sure their students are getting the same type of opportunities in Menifee County that they are in Montgomery County. So making sure we collaborate and facilitate those type of partnerships.
To me, that's going to be one of the biggest challenges because we've worked when I was teaching and even as school administrator in silos to get the work done. So I hope that there is something in place that it's maybe almost a knowledge base before you even think about being in the pilot.
Or a learning agenda. I love that question. The co-ops I do think will be pivotal, but also have some good news in that we've got a couple of tiny districts that are already leading the way. Eminence Independent and Frankfurt Independent, for example, are really small districts that are pretty far along down the road of making this local implementation happen. So I think it's been important in the L3s that we have thought, not to your all's credit, not just regionally, but in terms of the size of the districts from Jefferson County to, I don't know who the smallest is, but yeah, I think that's going to be critical in this transition phase that you described.
I would agree whether it's small or large because sometimes a lot of large districts
Yeah.
think, I know how to do this.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
we're
Or
going to
I'm
go our
already
separate
doing
way.
it.
I'm already doing this. and I'm working well, so why do I need to
Popular, too.
change?
Yeah, right.
Yes,
Right.
Julie?
Well, I think too, if we look at Jefferson County, their journey to success that they do in Jefferson
Yeah.
County is a great model for a lot of what they're doing here too. So, are there some things that could be changed? Yes, but there's something to be learned from whether it be Jefferson County or Eminence Independent.
You're right.
Yes, Julie.
Yeah, so I think a couple weeks ago, I had the opportunity for the first defensive learning at an 8th grade school district, or 8th grade in our school district. And the thing that kept resonating with me is these kids are finding vibrant learning experiences outside of school.
Yeah.
So as an example, one of the kids had programmed something for Roblox, and he did the research to find out how he had to get that onto Roblox's platform to start earning money. This kid is now getting a check for $3,500 a month. So I want to make sure we don't stay in those silos because the vibrant learning experiences are all around the kids and they're finding them themselves. We need to be in tune to the kids of what they're excited about to learn about, what they're curious about. That's how the vibrant learning experiences really happen. They
It is
can't be
vibrant.
forced upon them.
You're here.
You can see the board interest in this topic has not diminished one bit. Please, let's finish this item. Yes.
Look, Sam, if you, or Beth, whoever, if you could go back to the yin and yang, blue and green, federal, local slide. I'm still sitting here with Randy's question and having looked at the technical, I love the technical document, by the way. I'd kind of like to lead more with that line that says vibrant learning is required. That really asks and answers a lot of questions for me. But when I think about this one, Randy, for all intents and purposes for accountability, because we've done away with the color coding system and we're moving around this non-siloed, collaborative support for all learners across the state, when it comes right down to it, if we think about how we've scaled the federal back to just the bare bones, that helps me get to a better place in terms of the girth of testing. So, because really when it comes down to it on the accountability side of things, it's the federal system minimum. So another way to just contemplate it, because districts have so much choice and flexibility on the left-hand side. And if we went through with Mickey and just checked on each of those that's already required someplace outside the assessment and accountability system, like the interim assessments in reading and math, the K2, which doesn't even show up on the slide, for example, those are in statute someplace else. So, over time, we may chip away at some of those requirements as well. But trying to talk myself into it a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I can see what you're saying on the right, for ours, the right-hand side.
Yeah.
That has
That
reduced.
scale back, yeah.
But then it comes over to the left-hand side, which is local accountability, which is fine. But it's also how, at the end of the day, the legislature is going to say, what's your scorecard, whether we like that or not. And then on that scorecard, we're going to have more versus less. Because we're also requiring before I had the option of doing something locally, whether I wanted to or not.
Yeah, to announce it.
But
or not,
now
yeah.
I'm going to be required to do it And one's going to be the accountability, I guess, is over here. The assessment's increasing, but the accountability for the feds is decreasing. I mean, that's what, in talking, I'm trying to talk myself into it too, and that's the only thing I can come up with.
And two, the other questions that we're probably going to get from legislators is where does civics fit into this? Where does financial
Right.
literacy? So there may be some questions that even as when we start the advocacy phase is they want to see civics to be more prominent in this, or they may want to see financial literacy to be more prominent, and how that's part of the.
I agree, but that's what comes back to nothing's going to change, though, then. I mean, when I'm looking at all this, what I really love is the vibrant learning experiences is what we've been talking about. That's the innovation to me.
Absolutely.
For accountability and
Agreed.
assessment.
Agreed.
But when I'm required to do all this others, the one thing that's left out is the vibrant learning experiences, because the teacher's going to say, I had to teach these standards again because I'm going to be assessed on it, whether it's federal or local, and nothing's changed from that standpoint. The vibrant learning experiences comes from the standpoint of where we are now with L3s that are saying, we don't care about that over there. Give kids vibrant learning experiences, and this will all take care of itself. It will all fall in line. But we haven't changed that philosophy out there in all the school districts that forget about accountability and assessments and really focus on vibrant learning experiences, because that's where, when we get up here to post-secondary, is making the total difference for workforce development. So that's my only concern. I mean, I'm not asking questions for criticization.
No.
Criticizing. I'm asking questions as you. How do we change instruction? And we've let accountability. The one thing that I hope about the federal government right now is hopefully as the department goes away, the accountability and the assessment goes away, and we could truly build our own assessment system. Right now, we're still just trying to be federally compliant no matter what we're doing. That's just my take on it. We're giving more local options. But because of the reading and math, I mean, I sat through a presentation yesterday that science, back to Dr. Todd's thing, that if I'm proficient in science, I'm adding $2 million to the economic workforce development. Reading and math is very powerful, but that doesn't add to the economic development. It's the science portion that he always talks about, driving the nail through the thing, the new entrepreneurs. After watching that presentation, I'm sitting there thinking about our assessment and how do we drive that economic workforce that Mr. Link is would be in charge of for the state. How do we drive that? Vibrant learning experience will drive that.
Absolutely.
These other things don't, and that's my only hard part about this. I've got to continue to be convinced that instruction will change. I said it enough. So anyway, that's my purpose of asking the questions, is how are we getting to that fundamental question you said that teaching is going to change?
And I think that's why the town halls have been so important, because of the focus on the local accountability model and having districts to present that. That's why those have been successful, because a lot of times when you get into groups, the questions is, are we meeting this federal accountability piece, or what are we doing? How are we meeting this piece? But really, by having districts on display of what they're doing with local accountability, to me, that's the exciting part of this. This is something that has potential to make a change in what our kids are experiencing each and every day. That's that local accountability focused on vibrant learning.
Agreed.
I suppose we could, to Randy's point, take writing and social studies and think about it in the similar way that we thought about science as well, and scale back further. My inference is you guys have heard from a lot of social studies teachers, and the field says don't do that, but I would be hard-pressed to not be able to justify writing and social studies in the same way as science, in that we're building performance assessment systems all along the way that ask and answer that question. But I don't know if that's a compromise stand. I'm trying to figure out how we get to today's motion for consideration, knowing that there are still some kinks to be worked out. So I don't know if that's a compromise stance or not.
I appreciate this discussion. I'd like for us to make sure we have all the information before us, that we've taken the time to generate through these town hall meetings, come back with an iteration of a product that is a work in progress in and of itself, and I think we've identified some of the important dynamics and questions that we have to have in mind as we plan the next steps and the of engagement, both with the technical community, our I'm going to call them our colleagues in pioneering and building this system, because a lot of answers probably reside there, because this local conversation is as an important component of advocacy and policy as anything, if we kind of help
That's what
them
I was
make that point, make that case, and be used in that, be leveraged in that way. And keep in mind, we've got students who are experiencing a learning process that is being burdened by an assessment system that we're trying to tame. And so we have a very unclear policy environment, both at the state and the federal level. But let's persist in our work. And I appreciate the kind of passion that I think this conversation represents, passion for doing it really, really well, as we appreciate those folks who are the agents of representing these ideas and our aspirations in every quarter. You have done it well. So let's make sure we are fully informed, and then I'm going to ask for a motion.
An assessment system we're trying to tame. That will outlive you.
Go ahead on.
That will.
I love it.
So as we've moved forward with 3.0, we have had some feedback. So we've had some very positive feedback. And as I've mentioned, we talked with the School Curriculum Assessment and Accountability last Tuesday. We spoke with Kentucky United We Learn on Thursday, and we talked with the Local Superintendent Advisory Council yesterday. So we've gotten good feedback on 3.0. So let's move to the next slide. So when we started with the Kentucky United We Learn Council, there were 4 habits that were centered for us to utilize and to work through. That being inclusion, empathy, co-creation, and reciprocity. And you can see here the definitions of each of those. So we thought it was important as we moved toward this, this discussion on 3.0 to see if we had been utilizing these innovative habits in development of these. So co-creating, using empathy, including all voices, and then again, that reciprocity of sharing that power and sharing the voices. So we asked the members of the Kentucky United We Learn Council on Thursday. We had 23 members that were there and responded to our survey. So if we could quickly look at the survey around these habits. So you see question 1 was about the extent of which our members thought that they were heard and given equitable space to contribute. And you can see on inclusion, 82% said they either was the habit of inclusion was included to a great extent or completely. So I think you'll see a pattern in this. I mean, you see one person said to a small extent and 3 to a moderate extent, but I think you're going to see that same pattern on each of these slides. So if we'll move to question 2 about empathy. Again, 82% was either great to a great extent and completely. The next question I think was on co-creation. Again, 74% was felt that the participants saw their feedback. So that iterative process has been very important as we create each of these frameworks, and last year with the prototypes. Question 4 was about reciprocity, if they felt like their contributions as council members were recognized and integrated into 3.0. And you can see again, high marks on reciprocity. And the last one, again, was about reciprocity. So this shows the extended effort from our council to make sure that we're utilizing, we're leading with empathy, we're leading with inclusion and including diverse voices so that everybody feels like they're heard. And in these, I'm really pleased with these results because you can see to a great or completely have shown our members see that those habits were utilized. And then the last question we asked was about the framework itself. And so we ask, what level of support do you have for the framework 3.0? So what we just discussed, the new updated framework. So you can see that the options were I support advancing 3.0 into the advocacy phase because we know that when it gets to the legislature, may have changes, right? We'll go into that advocacy work, but do they support it as presented or with specific revisions, or do they not support it at all? So you can see that 30% of our members supported it as presented, wanted to move it on as it is. 57% said they supported it, but with some minor tweaks to that. And then 13%, which was 3 people, said that they could not support it. And one of the 3 people that said they could not support it said, I can't support it because I haven't been here to hear the conversation. The other 2, and you'll see that in a slide, said I could support it with more information, more clarity in developing the resources from what we think is the next step. So moving to the next slide, the 57% of the which were 12 responders stated that they could support it with into the advocacy phase. You can see that some of the same questions that you've raised here around our local measures, talking about reliability of those vibrant learning experiences, social studies, again, the evaluation of those local systems. And I'll say that the themes around the feedback were about equity around 2 points. The first being that all students, every student, no matter the demographic group, was included in all the opportunities for vibrant learning experience. That was the main theme. The other theme that came out of the respondents was about impact, and we've talked about that multiple times. Commissioner said if we're not impacting the students' experiences in the classroom, then we've not hit that mark.
Just a new mousetrap.
So that was the 2 themes that came out of that was sorry.
To add to that,
Yep.
thank you, Dr. Stafford. If you look at to the point about reducing the testing footprint, the social studies writing to be assessed, essentially treating that like science, that was one of the points that was brought up by the Cool Council. So
Okay.
again, that was something that was supported, reducing the social studies and writing footprint down. So that if that's a recommendation of the board moving forward, it is supported by the Cool Council, or at least some of the people that felt like they couldn't, that there's some changes that need to be made. So reducing that testing footprint, again, our approach on social studies and writing is a little bit different, but it would make sense to try to treat that in a similar fashion as science.
And then other suggestions were about clarity of requirements. And we think that that's part of the next phase of the Cool Council, developing some resources, communication, and then supports around developing local accountability systems and so forth.
And to add to that, one of the points that was made in LSAC yesterday was, we've already started talking with one district and also in our strategic planning group with Karen Dodd is what rubrics for local accountability in order to help guide the work as opposed to constraining. You want to have as much flexibility as possible, but you also want to give guidelines to help districts move in that direction. So having that balance between rubrics that help direct the work versus constrain the work. So how do you find that balance? So that was some of the things that was even mentioned in LSAC yesterday.
The next thing, the next topic was about the overall system, and you can see again around equity and then the impact of our students in making sure that all districts have the ability to create vibrant learning experiences and making this transformational for the student experience. And the last thing there was about the process, looking at differences in, again, those equity and the technical documents for clarity sake and so forth. And
Can you
then,
go back to two? Unfortunately, my computer will not bring up any of this because it says the PowerPoint's corrupted or whatever. So can you go back because it went so fast, I didn't get to read them all.
sure.
Okay, I mean, I haven't been able to open this document up because of technical reasons.
So, do we want to look now at the kind of view of their experiences? I would like to point out to the board that we have some idea of the specific further revisions that have been suggested by the Cool Council. They are here.
Yes.
In the discussion, I have a sense that we may have the desire to state explicitly what our further revisions might be.
If I may, Chair Robinson.
Please, yes.
We did meet with LSAC, and LSAC, while there were conversations around the change in the picture to say, talk about state accountability with federal guidelines
Right.
or federal requirements, there's other conversations that wasn't really necessarily changing the framework, but talking about, do we offer pacing guides for those interim assessments? So there's some conversations there. And also, too, this is what I talked about with rubrics, as helping steer the work as opposed to not really constraining the work. But LSAC voted to move ahead without any changes to recommend this to for moving into the advocacy phase. Unanimously, actually.
And I appreciate that, and I read that, but it's our job to criticize too, and to look at certain things. So
Oh, absolutely.
I respect the people that's on there, and they do represent, I guess, the state from their legislative districts, but they don't represent everybody that's out in the field too. So I think it's important for us to continue to raise questions here.
Oh, sure, and that's again, that's what we're asking here is, are we willing to move forward into the advocacy phase with changes that you recommend? Because again, that's what you have to vote on.
All right, so we are now seeking to approval in order to give further guidance. Vice Chair Young, would you please articulate a
I
motion
would
for
offer a
us?
motion for the board's consideration to advance Framework 3.0 with Kentucky Board of Education requested revisions to include the language of state accountability with federal, what's the word? Guidance? Federal requirements.
Meets.
And further reducing social studies and writing in keeping with the rationale we have provided in earlier conversations around science, while also seeking additional feedback from SCAC and LSAC, moving us into the advocacy phase and for budgeting purposes. Open to friendly amendments, but I think that might give you enough direction to know what a 3.1, a 3.2, or a 3.3 might look like, while getting it back in front of the other groups when they meet again.
Through your motion, though, for a question, for clarification,
Yes,
does that
could we
mean
give a
coming back
second?
here or not? Well, I need clarification. Okay, well, we'll wait till
Give a second,
second
yes.
and ask for amendment.
Thank you, Diane. Okay, all right, Randy, you had a
A
question?
question and, or ask for an amendment that prior to that, it comes back to us for review to make sure that we're meeting those
So my response
particular
would be that I
issues.
wouldn't include that in the motion, but the expectation that this remains an iterative process and then would come back to us in June, I think could be there.
I'm just wanting to make sure that's a clarification for your motion.
Advancing into the advocacy phase for budgeting purposes.
And subsequent reporting and review at the June board meeting.
And I would amend my motion to include that time expectation. Does an amended motion need a second? A second? Come on, Robert's rules.
Yes, it would. You got to approve the amendment to go back to
Okay,
the.
second the amended motion.
Okay, all right. I'm going to put the question on the amended amendment first. So the requirement, the expectation that there will be subsequent reporting to this board in June. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, now let's go to the amended motion, if you will, that essentially we are incorporating the idea that the federal, what is now represented as federal accountability is going to be state with federal requirements, that the approach to both social studies and writing will be the same as the approach to science, which is
Grade band levels.
Grade band.
grade band and rubrics. And this gives us guidance now to the staff to continue working on the technical aspects of this and budgeting, and we can start to move in the direction of advocacy. So.
And putting money to.
And it's important that we start to put some money to this, because we need to understand that as soon as we have our vision somewhat clarified. And we are embracing this journey of a work in progress that is being designed and built by a community of interest that is itself diverse. My friends, this is quite a challenge, but we're up for it, and this board has never shied away from anything hard. And so I'm going to put the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We're going to link arms and keep giving support and leadership to this effort, because we are determined to provide a vibrant learning experience for every student, and we're not going to let an antiquated accountability system stop us. I am going to ask the board to please, can I declare a recess for 15 minutes? I am declaring a recess for 15 minutes, and when we return, we will introduce our new colleague to the table. Thank you so much for a really intense and substantive conversation. Welcome back. Thank you for returning from our brief recess. I do want to begin by introducing Harold McKinney of Danville, Kentucky. He's been chosen by the governor to represent the 3rd Supreme Court District on the Kentucky Board of Education. Mr. McKinney, welcome aboard. Thank you. I think you just witnessed a very serious board at serious work, and we look forward to your contribution in this regard. Thank you very much.
And he's been sworn in.
And he has been sworn in as
really?
sitting diligently
Well,
at the table.
I
Would
haven't
you
been approved by the
introduce
Senate,
yourself?
so I've been sworn at, but I haven't been approved.
You're
We'll
good.
see.
You're good.
The main thing is to be sworn at least.
All right, guys.
I love
We
it.
have a really important asset here, a sense of humor. Thank you very much. He'll work out real well. Let's return to our agenda, review items A and ask Matt Ross and Jay Ritter to come and provide an update on Boyd County.
You're on.
You're
on?
Yep.
All right. Good afternoon. This is our ongoing item where we discuss Boyd County sort of financial position. You know, I think it's been almost a year or maybe a little over a year since we first started talking to Boyd County. And ultimately, the department provided, I think, $645,000 as a loan to Boyd County. And so far, they have made 2 payments back, so $430,000, both of them earlier than was required. So they have one more payment remaining. And, you know, we keep touching base with them, providing support, both my office and the Office of Continuous Improvement and Support, constant contact. And just want to say they've done a lot and come a long way, and continue to be impressed with the direction they're moving in. We have Superintendent Boblet and their finance officer, Mr. Barber, are available online. Would you all like to say anything about the progress you've made?
Thanks, sir. Appreciate that. Good afternoon, board members. Thank you for your time, and thank you for all that you do for the students of the Commonwealth. Larry and I have been listening for about the last half hour, 45 minutes, and it's interesting to see what's taking place when it comes to assessment across the Commonwealth, and thank you for that work. I'm pleased to share with you that the process has been truly eye-opening that we've been going through, strengthening us both financially and instructionally too. Through our collaboration with Dr. Foster, her team, Mr. Ross and his team, our district has grown significantly and remain committed to continuous improvement, both financially and academically. And Larry is going to provide you all with a detail.
Good afternoon. I want to share just a few things with you all to give you some indicators that we think are demonstrating that Boyd County is heading in the right direction. Mr. Ross just shared that we had made the 2 previous payments of $215,000 on our $645,000 loan. I'm pleased to report today that coming this Friday in the mail will be a check for the final payment of the $215,000, which will take care of that one-time loan that we had to obtain from KBE. So we're excited about that. We also, one of the things that we discovered during this process was the need for good communication between the finance team and director and the various shareholders that we have. So we continue to place great emphasis on that. Primarily through providing dialogue with the board as far as giving them some highlights of the monthly reports so that they can see where we stand in terms of the budget, and also to address any questions or concerns that they may have in those areas. We also, Mr. Boblet and I also are meeting on a regular basis to discuss items related to the finances of our district to make sure that both of us are on the same page in those areas as well. And then finally, with our principals of our schools, and then also our other area department heads, continue to provide them with monthly supports and give them some guidance as where they may need to look in terms of their budget and overspending, make sure that they're not overspending in areas, and also be available to address any questions or concerns that they may have as well. I'm pleased to say too that when we look at the end of February, that all of our areas were within the spending percentage of their budget that they should be for that particular time of year. So that gives me encouragement that we are on the right track to meet the 2.9% contingency that we believe that we can be at the end of June. As Mr. Ross also shared as well, his team, or Chay's team, has been phenomenal in reaching out and providing support to me as the finance director. We've been looking at forecasting and projecting our cash position as of June 30th with them. We feel good as to where we are at this particular time, but we will continue to monitor that with them. And then also our former finance director, Mr. Flew, will be coming in to kind of help guide me in that, since this is my first year in the position as well. So I'm trying to utilize all resources that are available to make sure that we finish in a better position definitely than we were at the end of last year as well. We've also begun our tentative budget and had budget meetings with the principals from our schools to try to get our staffing allocations in line with the formulas that have been set by our board. We think that we have a plan in place and we are in preparation so that we can get those numbers in line for the May 15th deadline for the non-renewals. We also, in March, a special meeting was held with our board to give them an earlier look at the tentative budget as we move toward that tentative budget in May, to provide them with where we think our costs may possibly be for the upcoming year, where we think our revenues may be for the upcoming year, and then also to provide them with a scenario of a compensating tax rate and a 4% increase tax rate, just so that they can make some decisions as to what they might want to do in that particular area. We think that both of those, we've got a plan, I think, in place that will enable us to be a little bit better than we were on contingency at the end of 2026 than we will be here at the end of June. But it requires us to keep costs at the same level for the next year, except for any circumstances that may arise that are necessary. So we look forward to that. We've also had meetings with our other area department heads to kind of see where they stand as far as spending for next year, any major items that may possibly need to be. And then also, we're going to begin work after all of these meetings. We're starting the work of putting together that tentative budget so that we can see where we stand and have that ready for the board to approve in May as well. We also have some money that is left over in our capital outlay after the payment of all of our debt service for the year. So plan on requesting that the board capital funds request from the board so that we can move some of that money from our general fund to further enhance our general fund cash position at the end of the year as well. So we feel very good that we are headed in the right direction. Also recognize, though, that it may take us a few years to get ourselves in a better financial position, or a position that we would like to be and that we feel comfortable being. But I believe that our district is up to the challenge. I believe in the people of our district. I think we are up to the challenge. And I think that we have better days ahead of us as we move forward. So appreciate the opportunity to kind of share that update with you guys. We're excited for what's happening and hope to continue to move forward in the right direction here.
Thanks so much for that update. It's been a pleasure working with you on this project. Board members, are there comments or questions, observations? Lou?
Superintendent Boblet, so you were able to avoid declaring reduction in force, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Excellent. And were non-renewals up?
I'm sorry.
Non-renewals?
Contract renewal.
They will be going out. They will be going out in May.
But was there a significant increase?
Well, we were overstaffed across the district by about
Okay.
16 staff members.
Okay.
And mainly due to previous ESSER money that we had that we did not, I didn't have those out in time last year because we weren't aware of the situation, or I was not aware of the situation that we were in until after non-renewal time.
So course correction.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
The comments, Commissioner?
Yeah, I'd like to take an opportunity to, Superintendent Boblet has been great to work with and his staff, and also thank you for acknowledging the structures and the processes that Dr. Foster and her team, and also Mr. Ross and his team with Che has helped to implement. I said, as we implement processes and structures to make these decisions, it makes it a little more, makes it easy to state our North Star, what's really important in moving forward. So having those communication structures, but also working together to develop those budgets and the processes that we've helped here. And again, in talking with our staff, you've been great to work with too there at Boyd County. So a good team effort to get people help and having the right people to just come to the table and say, okay, what do we need? Asking that question as you did at Boyd County. What do we need? What do we need to do? And then also accepting any type of input or any type of information that we were able to give. So thank you so much for that, but also thank you to the KDE staff that has stepped in on behalf of our districts.
Thank you. Thank you, Superintendent Bartlett and the staff here at KDE. You've done a magnificent job of attacking what was looking very, very scary and threatening, and we just made it work out. That's the way it's supposed to happen with good colleagues. Appreciate it. Thanks for coming.
Exactly right. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'd now like to ask Karen Dodd to come and take us through another discussion of our strategic plan update and help us continue to be disciplined.
Absolutely. Am I on?
Yes, you are.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you this afternoon. And I'm really excited to share this plan with all of you. In the 14 years that I've been here doing this, I truly think that we have a really excellent plan right now. And so it's taken a lot of collaborative effort across KDE to pull this together. And I really think that we have something that is very relevant to education in Kentucky right now, as well as having goals and strategies that the department can really impact. I also want to thank our previous interim commissioner, Robin Kinney, and Dr. Fletcher for being so supportive throughout the process of pulling this together. So it has been a work in progress for quite a while. So we'll go ahead and get started with the next slide. You'll notice that our vision and our mission and our core values have not changed. These have been the same since Dr. Glass was here. And you all have been very supportive of the United We Learn vision. So that was something that you asked for our newest commissioner, Dr. Fletcher, to carry on. So that vision and mission have not changed. The three big ideas on the next slide are also the same. So focusing on those vibrant learning experiences for every student, encouraging innovation, especially around assessments and accountability, and creating a bold new future for Kentucky schools through collaboration with communities. So then getting into the meat of it, we have our objectives. And here we have on the left-hand side, those that revolve around customers and stakeholders. And then we've also included some operational goals or objectives in this case, to be sure that everyone within KDE is represented within this strategic plan. So on the left-hand side, under customer and stakeholders, we really want to focus on the objectives of reimagining the assessment and accountability model, which is something that you just talked about. So that's our number one priority. We also want to reduce chronic absenteeism, improve early literacy, improve early numeracy, and expand the recruitment of qualified educators. On the operational side, we look at a lot of the surveys that we put out, and then from there decide where do we really need improvement. So we have improving customer satisfaction, improve organizational process awareness, and build leadership capacity. And I will dive into each one of these. So starting with reimagining assessment and accountability, you all just had a really good conversation around all of that. Ultimately, it is to establish that accountability model that includes vibrant learning, making it meaningful and useful for all learners. Now, when I brought you a draft plan back in December, we had here vibrant learning experiences. So I wanted to be sure to point out that we did change this goal to make it more around the accountability system and instead use vibrant learning as one of our strategies that you will see as a reoccurring theme in our strategies. So the key performance indicators that we'll be looking at to determine if we are on track with this accountability system is, of course, the approved model framework, and then increasing percentage of districts at each stage of the local accountability system. So these next three, this really is the work of our Office of Continuous Improvement, so Kelly Foster's office, the Division of Innovation, all the things that they've been working on with districts around their local accountability systems, their portrait of a learner, and their vibrant learning experiences. And so to measure that, if you will, We're looking at how many districts are just starting out, how many are spreading that throughout their district, and then moving into sustaining those efforts. So that's how we're going to be looking at that as we get this new framework started up. The strategies we're looking at are elevating the vibrant learning experiences. Again, that's out of Sarah's division. Something that with the grant that we've been given for the United We Learn Council, they've been able to hire some folks, and this is the bulk of their work is to help with all those vibrant learning experiences. We're also looking to co-create and the accountability system that's with the Cool Council and all the other stakeholders, and then support districts in developing their local accountability system through collaboration with their communities. Moving on to reducing chronic absenteeism. We want to decrease the statewide chronic absenteeism rate from 28% down to 15%. This jumped up a lot during the pandemic. We are seeing it start to come down. This may be an aggressive goal for us. We've been looking at our historical numbers, how we've been trending. This would get us very close to where we were pre-pandemic. Our key performance indicator here is to decrease the percentage of schools in Kentucky who are experiencing high or extremely high chronic absenteeism. So just to be clear, the goal is one thing, that's decreasing the chronic absenteeism rate. And when I talk about the key performance indicators or KPIs, it's those other things that indicate whether that overall rate will be coming down. So this is some of what we'll be looking at. Under strategies, we'll be expanding opportunities for vibrant learning experiences. So you see we changed we went from, let's see, the first time we had elevate vibrant learning. So under this one, we're saying expand opportunities for vibrant learning. Because we truly believe that if students are more engaged, they're going to want to be in school. So that's the hope there with those vibrant learning experiences. And then to provide comprehensive support systems for at-risk students and engage in proactive communication with family and community. So around that last one, you may be aware that we started a campaign around chronic absenteeism. Back in August, we had radio spots, TV spots, billboards. We had those out again. I believe it was in January. They were put out again. And so we don't know exactly if that helped. I mean, like I said, we have seen the rates going down. My team has been watching it month to month, and we are seeing it come down a little bit. We don't know if that's the reason, but that's why we have more than one strategy so that we can come at it from all different angles. Moving on to the next one, improve early literacy. You're going to see a similarity between improving early literacy and improving early numeracy, and we've worked really closely with Mickey Marianelli's and her team to come up with the goals here and as well as the KPIs and the strategies. When we brought this back to you back in December, we had a lot of different goals that we were toying around with. We really decided to focus in on third grade. So some of the feedback that we got was including 10th grade and ACTs and all of that. And we're, of course, going to continue to follow all of those numbers. But we really felt that it was important to focus in on third grade proficiency. That's where the funding that we have is going into early learning. So with the funding and the things that we are capable of doing, we felt that this was the right place to go. So we're looking to go from a rate of 47% to 60%. Looking, again, those KPIs are decreasing the rate of novice in reading, and then increasing the number of educators participating in the Kentucky Reading Academies, a reduction in reading improvement plans. Actually, we changed the wording on that to make it a little bit more clear. So that's actually going to read reduction in the need for reading improvement plans as students make accelerated progress toward proficiency in reading. Also, increase in the implementation of early literacy screening assessments and increase in the implementation of the literacy diagnostics. These are all strategies that will be coming out of Mickey Marianelli's office. So, well, except for the first one, the vibrant learning experiences. Again, here we're talking about aligning those vibrant learning experiences with the Kentucky academic literacy standards. And then support high-quality literacy instruction and professional learning, support evidence-based literacy curriculum and instructional resources, and provide targeted literacy support and intervention. Numeracy looks pretty much the same. So the number here, we're going from 43% to 55%, but the KPIs are basically the same, just changing out reading or changing out mathematics for reading. The strategies are the same, aligning the vibrant learning experiences with those mathematics standards, and then the other strategies are the same, just in the math category. Then expanding the recruitment of qualified educators. This was a really tough one for us. We spent a lot of time going back and forth on coming up with just the right goal for this. So, of course, working with Meredith Brewer and her office, we came up with increasing the completion rate of eligible students in teaching and learning, the teaching and learning pathway, from 6% to 14%. This is one where we really struggle with what is within our control when it comes to either retaining teachers or recruiting teachers. So this is why we've really focused in on the teaching and learning pathway. This is something out of the department. So we felt like this is where we would have the most control. So looking at increasing the enrollment in the teaching and learning pathway, increasing registered apprenticeships, keeping an eye on the enrollment at the educator preparation programs. And so to do that, the strategies are around encouraging early entry and then elevating the teaching profession. And I know that Dr. Brewer has been working on another campaign that you'll see shortly. I think that's coming out, I believe, in April, and she just shared with us yesterday the spot that will go on Spectrum TV for that. And it's very catchy. It's all around go teach. Go teach is what it is. We're very excited to see that come out. Then we move over to the operations side. We've got the 3 goals here. So first, around improving customer satisfaction. We want to increase the customer satisfaction percentage. So what we did, let me explain this one a little bit before I read that. What we did here is looking at our customer satisfaction survey, where were we seeing the biggest need? And so 2 of the questions that popped out were, I know who to contact to get information, and KDE values feedback. Both of those were rather low. So we combined the 2 of those to come up with an index that we will look at. So that's where that 56% comes from. That's a combination of the 2 indicators in there, 2 statements that are in there. And we want to move that up 10%, so moving that to 66%. So in addition to combining those 2 into an index, there were several other things in our employee survey that we want to keep an eye on that will tell us, nope, I'm talking the wrong one. No, these are still in customer service. Sorry, I'm confusing my goals here. So the indicators would be to increase the superintendent satisfaction rate for KDE is responsive in communication. So in this one, we actually looked at the response, the groups of respondents and where they were lower. So superintendents being a key stakeholder group, where did they think we needed to improve? And being responsive in communication was one that popped out at us, so we want to keep an eye on that. And then for district administrators, their lowest one was KDE leverages social media effectively. And then we also want to maintain high agreement in our biannual pulse check. This is something that we just started in, I think it was November of 2024. So for 3 months, we had at the bottom of all of our email that went out from KDE, just a short little survey. We're calling it a pulse check. And it basically was, if you emailed us with a problem, we're responding to you. Was your situation taken care of? And was the person who helped you courteous and professional? And so I think we scored like 97 and 98 respectively on that. And so like I said, that was out for 3 months. We plan on doing that same survey twice a year and just keeping an eye on that, which we hope will also help with the satisfaction rate overall for customers, or at least gives us another point to look at, is to figure out, well, what don't they like? And so I'm working with Jen Ginn, our Director of Communications, to formulate a communication plan so that we can work more diligently on that. The next one, this one is around employees. So improving the average favorable agreement rate of the operations domain in the employee satisfaction survey from 82 to 87%. Our employee survey, we have always scored really high on it. So this was actually one of the lowest domains, and this domain has only been in there for the last couple of years, and it was based on an external audit that was done, and they had a finding of processes needing to be put into place. So we added this whole domain focused around processes and operations within KDE. So 82% is not bad, but it actually was the lowest of all of the other domains that we have on the survey. So this is what we decided to focus on, reducing the number of process-related risks. So going back to that original audit that prompted this, we want to keep an eye on that to see if anything else process-related comes up. We want to increase the agreement on the employee survey for KDE regularly reviews and improves its processes. Also, processes are documented to protect important assets, and processes for handling an emergency are documented. So even though none of these were what I would consider to be scored low, they are things that could help us boost up that domain. So we're looking at developing an agency-wide process management system that would help us to keep an eye on all of that. We know that we've been putting processes in place, but we haven't really documented what are our core processes overall for KDE. How do we know, have we actually documented them? Are we moving them forward? Do we have a plan for improving them? That kind of thing. So we just need to put something like that in place. And then the last one is building leadership capacity. So for this one, we really struggled again with the right goal for this. We decided to take the customer satisfaction survey and look at the perception of our leadership within KDE as our main goal. Again, simply because on the KDE side, our leadership domain was really high. We were already in the 90s. So we decided to look at this one. Our customers were about 60% satisfied with our leadership, so we want to move that up to 76% over the next 4 to 5 years. Well, again, this is the one where we're setting that based on the customer survey, but we're also going to be looking at the employee survey and some of the questions in there. So increasing the overall agreement rating of employee satisfaction in our leadership domain. And then we have one question in our skills and expertise domain that states, I am able to develop my professional skills in my current role. So we're going to keep an eye on that, and we have a strategy moving forward to provide more opportunities for professional learning, particularly around leadership development. So as that as that strategy plays out, we may even need to go in and add something in our survey more about personal leadership, because we really, like I said, what we have in there right now is just around professional skills, but we don't have anything that really talks about if people feel like their leadership skills specifically are being developed. So that may be something that we want to look at. Our next steps, we are developing, I think I had one other thing written down. So we do have a written plan that we're working on. I think within your packets, I included the plan on a page. You can think of that as like an executive summary, and that's everything that I just went through here. but we're also putting together a full written plan that will have initiatives behind all of those strategies. We will include graphs that have all of our trend data as well as the projections for showing you how we'll get there. We are also working on a monitoring plan. So how are we performing? Probably on a quarterly basis, we'll be meeting with folks who are over all of these strategies, talking with them about the work that they're doing, how they know it's progressing, and if we're on track to meet our goals. And then we're also building a strategic dashboard that will be public facing. So we already have all of that trend data, so we'll be able to put that out there hopefully before the end of the year. It is started, so it may, I have it out there as a beginning of 2026 deliverable, but it may be out much sooner than that, at least with all of our trend data. And of course, some of this data will be coming in at all different times. Our customer service data is actually out right now. This customer survey is being implemented this month, so we'll have more data on that very soon. The employee survey is run in June every year, so we'll have that. Anything around proficiency wouldn't be until next fall, but yeah, so it'll come out at different times. But because we'll have this dashboard, we can update it as we get data in. That's it.
Comments. This is quite interesting. I'm wondering, do you have kind of like benchmarks for some of these, and so we know what we're building on, right?
Right. That's yes, because that's where those numbers come from. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's all of our trend data. So we're basing it off of our latest, but we have data that goes back. Actually, 5 years is what we're going to put into the plan, but we have much more data than that. We've been collecting all of this data for many, many years.
So let me ask, what would be of these the most challenging goal, Commissioner?
Well, I would say as far as challenging, when you're looking at building out the improve the early literacy and numeracy and making sure that we're implementing like the letters program and things of that nature, I think that's going to be the heaviest lift. But also too, the chronic absenteeism is something that we don't have necessarily the direct impact on. So that's another one that's very difficult to show that what we're doing is making a direct impact. But we still feel like that is something that's very important. I will also say too, we started meeting on this in the late summer, early fall, with the entire leadership team. So as we put this together, as we're working through, we went through a lot of iterations. We brought it back to our leadership team, talked about it again. Where are we going? What's the data look like? And thank you to Karen and her team for keeping all that work together for us, but also too, helping us provide that and get us on that right path. So again, everybody on the leadership team and even some within the sub-leadership team, if you will, within groups had a lot of input into this. So again, it's a lot of great work. But again, for me, the heavier lift is probably going to be the early literacy and numeracy, but the ones that we have probably, it's hard to make that direct impact is the chronic absenteeism.
Just a quick question, a couple of comments. First, I really like the plan on a page. That's super helpful to look at, and I understand this is not our plan to approve. But I did want to ask on that, I'm a little confused about why 2 different data sets on the build leadership capacity. Why wouldn't you just have the indicators related to the employee satisfaction survey instead of crossing over to the big goal of customer satisfaction?
The reason we did that was because it's so high. We were already, one of the questions that we were looking at, we were already at 92%, and we didn't see how we would really be able to improve much on what employees think as far as leadership. And again, keep in mind that that employee survey is employees rating their supervisors, so their chain.
So even on the indicator, I am able to develop my professional skills in my current role.
That was 92%.
But we still felt like it was worthy of.
We felt like we needed to keep an eye on it, which is why it's on there as a KPI, but we didn't feel like there was going to be a whole lot of room for improvement there since it's already at 92.
I guess I'm just suggesting, think about it. if you improve there, does that in fact cause you to improve from 60 to 76% on the total, on a totally different survey?
Like I said, we really
Wrestle
struggled
that
on
with
this
me.
one.
Right.
No.
And that's why I said it was like, perception. So the perception out there, because the number that we ended up going with was the 60% of our customers feel like we have good leadership within the agency. So how do we improve their perception? Because that's what a customer survey is, right? It's all about their perception of us. So how do we improve their perception? And I know what you're saying, because
I've been in higher
an-
ed too
it's-
long, Karen. That's fair enough. Yeah. The other thing I really like about it is this is the first time I've seen a department level plan because of commissioners across time, but that aligns so intentionally with the work of this board. So that coherence is quite a beautiful thing.
Other comments? Yes.
Do you feel like the work is fairly spread across the department, or is it going to
yeah.
put? Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So it's not putting like an unfair burden on any one division or anything.
I don't think so. I think we've talked with everybody. We've talked about it in leadership meetings. Everyone's had a voice in it. Yes, Mickey has a couple of these goals. Kelly has one of these goals. OAA, because of the accountability model, is in there. OFO is really on the operation side. Their input is going to be very important. Even OET, I think when we think about some kind of a management system around processes, we may need to involve OET in that. So I can't think of anybody who hasn't had a voice in here for sure. Everybody has had a voice in here, but I really do think everyone's represented.
Other comments? Yes.
And this might require Mickey. So, what cohort of letters are we on? Is it 3, 4, or 5? On 3. Okay. Do we have data on tracking yet of any kind of impact of the letters? And I'll tell you the reason I'm asking is because I had a discussion last night with a first grade teacher, and she said, I've never seen a kindergarten class come in so prepared reading and able to read as I have this class. So that's the reason I'm asking.
So
Say that one more time, please.
Yeah.
Say it one more time.
It was a first grade teacher last night that said, I have not seen a kindergarten class come in so well prepared being able to read as the class that has come in.
Awesome.
So we are hearing many comments from teachers, principals, leaders that are similar to that. When we look at our Kentucky Summative Assessment data, we're not yet seeing statistically significant outcomes. But I will say, in working with our third-party evaluator, so we had partnered with ICF for that. They are looking at some of the formative assessment data, and Dr. Poe has challenged us to really be innovative in the way that we are tracking data around this. And so there is gains around the universal screening data and the students who are meeting benchmark. But we're not yet seeing that translated to Kentucky Summative Assessment. But I believe that in time, and I hope within a very short time, we will start to see that taking shape, because it's just now the kindergartners that she's talking about.
That's what I was asking.
They will be in third grade, and my hope is that they will be much more equipped to navigate not only the decoding of the text on that page, but the comprehension that's required in the Kentucky Summative Assessment for reading.
Thank you.
I can tell you from personal experience, my grandchild yesterday, who's in kindergarten, is doing amazing things that our other ones have not done, and combining. I mean, I was trying to show him a single thing with like at in the beginning, but then he went on to tell me about compound words and so forth. And he's in kindergarten, and I'm sitting there. I think showing up already. It may not on the state assessments, but we've seen it in the NAEP scores, and that's translated across the board. So I do think it's showing improvement.
We are hearing from superintendents in their local interim assessments that they're seeing gains. I talked to a superintendent about 2 weeks ago that was talking about the gains that his students are having that have gone through, the teachers have gone through this letters training.
Yeah.
So we're hearing a lot of anecdotal, a lot of stories here and there, but as that expands, we're very happy with it.
So my concern is moving forward, I guess, with the strategic plan. If Title II funds are cut from the federal level, how's that going to impact our training, where we're at, and training more, as Dr. Todd always says, is the key is training teachers. So what do we have to do, I guess, let's say Title II, if it is cut, of advocating at the state level about getting professional development dollars back here to continue this training?
Well, you know, you have a friend in me in that conversation,
Right.
but in terms of the letter specifically, so we were able to use ESSER ARP funding,
Right.
and that will take us through cohort 4. That will be the next academic year. That's the last cohort that'll be paid out of our ESSER ARP funds. We do have funding in the Read to Succeed Fund to be able to continue with additional cohorts beyond cohort 4. So as long as that remains a budget line item, then letters and other iterations of, you know, science of reading, professional learning will be in place. But beyond that, on a much greater level, we need professional learning funding that we can send to districts so that they can do work outside of letters. So we're taking on that cost, but there's curriculum-based professional learning, there's numeracy learning, there's science professional learning. So it will be important for us, and I would certainly request of the board that be a priority to ensure that schools and districts have access to professional learning funds.
Well, thank you. Again, high goals, but measurable and very determined goals. So thank you, Karen, for helping us with this. Our next, as I said at the outset of our meeting, the next 2 items kind of interrelate. So let's start this conversation with an update on our area technology centers. Ms. Hargis is going to open that conversation.
Good afternoon. Is it on?
Yeah, I think so.
Yes.
Yeah.
Better? So it is on?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. So I appreciate the opportunity to fill in for Beth Engel on this. Just wanted to provide an overview and history and purpose of what the ATCs actually do. So there are quite a few misconceptions and questions surrounding overall career and technical education in Kentucky, and specifically with the area technology centers. So while and again, I'm going back here for the historical perspective, but in 1917, the Smith-Hughes Act provided the first funding for CTE. And then what I would consider modern day.
I added that to the list.
And then what I consider coming into the modern day. The Vocation Educational Act of 1963 was signed into law by Lyndon Johnson and really served as a precursor for the 1984 Perkins Act, again, which has been revised and updated since then. And so all along with this, we also had the Appalachian Regional Development Act of 1965, and this was geared to improve economic opportunities in Appalachia, including connecting isolated communities to national markets, and with the 1963 legislation provided funding for the area centers. And again, we're going to talk about that again in just a moment. That was big, and that was really important, and still is to be able to connect those areas with less economic development and in the rural areas, and to get those into the modern day economy. So the goals of these acts were to provide vocational training for all people, and through required plans, improve the quality of vocational education. Because remember, not a lot of research had been done up until this point. It was also meant to create new vocational education programs for Appalachia and rural Kentucky, and this is where it goes back and really addressed connecting those isolated communities to the national markets. And then finally, again, provide the funding for the establishment of new centers. Now, I'd also like to point out that the legislation, even today, it goes back and forth. You know, we have moved on from the word vocational, and we would like to, we want to consider that antiquated and not in our vocabulary. But we do, we refer to it as career and technical education. But still, even in statute, there are a lot of references to that. And so, you're going to hear it, used interchangeably, especially, depending on where you are in the state. Next slide, please. So the next 3 slides point out some of the provisions and some items that I've really already discussed, but a few of the key provisions included in the legislation involved federal grants to fund state vocational education programs, provide part-time jobs for young people, help people upgrade or learn new skills, provide work study programs. So even work-based learning, was coming into picture. Emphasizing equal opportunity for women and girls. Now, I have presented a slide before where it shows back in the early days of CTE, you had all of the girls that were in the home ec classes, and everything else was designed for the boys. And so we've come a long way. And again, this was, part of all of this legislation was to get past that. And federal funds for new vocational schools, including, again, the partial funding for state-operated area centers. Okay, next slide. And next slide, let's get to our map. There we go, thank you. So the legislation was very significant. It marked a shift from training in just a few specific occupations and started realizing that there were more opportunities for people and that we really needed to be providing this training regardless of where the jobs were, what they were, and what people wanted to do. And they were also in response, as mentioned, to address those economic disparities in Appalachia and rural areas. And listen, we still encounter that today, and I know that you all are aware of that. So the results of these acts included the creation of the Kentucky Tech System, or Kentucky State-Operated Area Technology Centers. Now, a funny story, because this information was really, it's more difficult to find than you would think. And so we've had that question for years. Well, when did these things first start? Where did they come from? And I don't know if any of you in the room remember Clifford Wells. This was back when we were, okay, Dr. Pate does. This was back when we were still with the cabinet, and Clifford Wells was actually the one that hired me back in 2000, the end of 2005. And he remembered, and I got this information from Dr. Dale Winkler, at SREB, Clifford remembered sitting in a typing class and typing out the application to get the money for an area technology center in Montgomery County. And so that's how this was done. And so through the help of the federal funds, they were strategically placed throughout the state to provide equitable access to CTE opportunities to as many students, and this is a key point, to as many students as possible without placing additional financial burdens on local districts. And I again, cannot stress that point enough. So if you look at our chart, you see all of the orange dots. Those are our current 50 area technology centers. And, to me, if you're thinking about spreading the love out across the state, it's pretty well done. But over the years, the number has increased and decreased. We've seen area technology centers that have gone to local control. And then we've also seen some pop up and add new ones. Most recently, Estill County ATC was established, and I believe that was in 2019, maybe. I mean, it's been a few years ago now, but ironically, just this week, we had a conversation with a district that said, we need an ATC. How do we go about that? So the ATCs are considered state-operated, but the decisions are still made at that local level. Now, we provide the funding for the staff, for the building maintenance, for the operations of the programs and the utilities. But, and to me, most importantly, we have 3 regional consultants that work within those area technology centers. And they really serve as a liaison between the Office of Career and Technical Education and the local, the local district. And so these supervisors then can make sure that we're in compliance with state law, with regulations, and making sure that they're doing exactly what they should do to provide high-quality CTE. The office, and we don't dictate, we hear this a lot. Well, they're going to come in, you're going to tell us, we don't have any control over what programs we offer. And that's not how we are operated. That's not how we're set up. The programs should be aligned with business and industry, but again, that's made at the local level. It really should be included into the local needs assessment that's required as part of Perkins funding, because it would be high demand. So we know that there is a need and we can provide the training for that. One requirement that we do have that you're not going to see in a local district is we have a student-teacher ratio requirement. So a program is really not going to be viable unless throughout the day, and I don't know where this half student came about, but it's 12 and a half students per day for every one teacher. So we round it up and say 13 when we're discussing it, but we want it to be a good use of funds, of taxpayers' dollars. And so we do require that, and I think that says a lot, because I can't tell you the last time that we've actually closed a program due to low enrollment. It's been a while because students want in these programs. The ATCs are required to have steering committees. The steering committees are made up of the local business and industry, the local district administration, so that they can discuss these things, and they can work with the principal and say, this is what's needed, or this is what we would like to see for our community. And so again, OCTE is not going to come in and say, absolutely not, or, we're not going to dictate what they do. Decisions are made at the local level within the parameters that we have. But again, the parameters, we've worked a long time on those processes, and they do make sense, and there's a rationale for them. And with all CTE programs in the state, each program has an advisory committee. So you're not only getting it from a steering committee perspective, but advisory. So each program has got business and industry leaders in the community that are going to come in and say, we would like to see a change in curriculum maybe, or maybe we offer this pathway. We've got a new employer coming in. And so again, within those respective programs, you've got a group of experts that are advising the principal and really helping the school stay focused on the vision. Okay, next slide, please. Our ATCs actually provide a form of school choice. They serve 115 local districts, and when available, we do not pull spots from public schools. But if they have extra enrollment slots available, they can serve homeschooled and private schooled students. Next slide, please. Now, from the local district perspective, the regional approach provides increased CTE pathway opportunities for students and provides cost savings by the way of expanding the opportunities for all students to engage beyond what a single district might be able to offer. And so when you think about that, that's huge. We would love, in the perfect world, every district would have every program that we offer so that their students can go. But from a financial perspective, that's just not logical. And so if you look at the regional perspective and other districts are able to come, then we can put a welding program, which is the most expensive program that we have, and we can locate it here. And then we can serve as many districts as we can possibly hold. Our ATCs partner with business and industry to ensure relevant curriculum. We help provide post-secondary credential opportunities for students, including the dual credit, technical skill attainment, which could be an industry certification or an end-of-program assessment, work-based learning, an opportunity for students to graduate post-secondary ready. And we provide collaborative partnerships leading to job placement. That's something that we monitor for Perkins. How many of our students are leaving high school and they're either going on to post-secondary opportunities in a college or university, or they're going directly to the workforce. And we we have advanced technology and equipment that's aligned to current business and industry standards. And that's complicated and that's expensive because today's business and industry standards may not be the same that they're going to be tomorrow. And so we have to figure out a way to do that. And again, if we didn't have those ATCs, a lot of districts would get cut out because they just do not have, they don't have the budget to carry that on. And as I said, this is a condensed information, but in general, CTE is working to build or helping to build our workforce. Secretary Link and I serve on the SWAT committee and SWAT team for Kentucky, and there's a lot of good things going on. And secondary students are really that untapped pipeline, and they're ready. They want to go to work. We have a lot of signing days coming up where students will be recognized for they've already got a job. And I really thought that they wouldn't have many right now. And I was wrong. I've been visiting several schools here recently, and I've seen posters all over the buildings where the student, I mean, it's March, and their picture was already up because they're going to work with this employer at graduation. So many wonderful opportunities. But again, we're fortunate to have the ATCs because it's a high cost. And it's a high cost for local districts to be able to provide it. And so we don't want to burden districts that can't afford it. And we say in our office, equity is not always equal. And that's true when you're thinking about funding. Because for a student in a rural area of Kentucky to have access to this, it might cost a little bit more. And so, we have questions, but I think there's just a lot of misunderstanding sometimes about the differences between the state-operated and the local. And at this point, I am happy to take any questions you have.
I just want to thank, if
Yes,
it's okay,
Diane, please.
Chairperson Chair Robinson, thank Dr. Hargis for taking my phone call. As I was getting ready for the board meeting, I was reading through this, and I know this beautiful facility that's going up in the county that I live in that deals with workforce development, I'm sure. It looked like an ACT, but I couldn't find the mark on the map, and I was getting frustrated. So it was about 5 o'clock, so I said, let me just call her and ask
Locally
her.
operated.
It's locally operated, and she was very kind to share with me the difference. But the expectations, and when I was a director of middle schools in the same county, we ended up having a program where we had 8th graders that instead of going to elective class, they went to I thought it was the ATC. I guess it was not. It was the CTE. But they went, and I can remember standing in the office talking with the principal one day when the bus brought the kids back, and this young man had all this sawdust stuff all over him. And I said, oh, you got something on your back. And he said to me very clearly, he said, ma'am, it's okay. I go to the ATC. And I would love to know what that young man is doing today. But they were 8th graders.
Yep.
And they were loved it. Yeah, and getting them started off, like you say, a high school may be almost too late to start thinking about these careers. But I wanted to share that. That was so much fun. I remember I can just visually seeing him standing there and was like, okay, I'm sorry.
So it's fascinating that we're starting to think about these future opportunities made known to students so that they have a broader sense of the vision for their future that they might pursue rather than narrowing it at an early stage. Yes, Julie.
So I had the pleasure of serving on the advisory council for the Boone ATC for a couple of years prior to being on this board. And one of the biggest struggles is getting the instructors, because the instructors in CTE fields make a lot more money in private industry. And so we need to figure out a way creatively, I don't know, through credits to employers to release employees to be going to teach classes, because they're not going to have future pipelines if we don't have instructors in these programs. I mean, there was a couple of programs we were going to have to shut down because we didn't have instructors. The demand is there from the students. There's wait lists, but we don't have the instructors.
And please remember that tomorrow when we're discussing ABRs.
Wow. That's a good job, Dr. Argus.
Yes.
Kudos.
Preston,
But,
please.
we are very much, that's on our radar as well. And in fact, we hope to have some discussions with the General Assembly during the interim regarding that. So thank you for bringing it up.
Preston?
Sorry. Kind of just to tally off what Julie said. The one question I kept asking myself throughout this presentation was, how do we get more? How do we get more of these ATCs? How do we support this? Because it's clear, the demand is there. When you have more than 25,000 students engaged in these ATCs, like, the demand is clear. So I was sitting here asking myself, if we go back to the map, I don't know if we can, but there are 50 of these. They're pretty spread out, but there's still some clusters here and there that don't necessarily or have a little longer commute to these. Sure. Say we wanted to add, say, 5, 10 in the next 10 or so years from now. What would we have to do to kind of support that?
It would take General Assembly action. And we would love to see that. But again, and I don't want to diminish, I mean, I'm biased. I will admit that because I kind of grew up educationally in an ATC. Mm-hmm. So I do believe that they do a good job. But I'm not going to say that they do a better job than locally operated CTE. It's just a preference on what the district wants. But as it really goes back to the financial burden, and again, you've got schools in the state, your county in particular, that has always provided their own CTE. They're able to afford it. They have the good tax base. But some areas don't. So, like, if we were to do away with an ATC in one of those rural counties, they're not going to have access to it. So it would take legislation changes to the budgeting with the General Assembly in order to enact these. And unfortunately, that's what I had to tell this district that called this week. We said, we would love the idea of having more opportunities for students in your area, but we can't do anything about it because KDE does not have that fund, and it would have to come from the General Assembly.
Commissioner, then I'm going to, did you?
I'll defer to Randy first.
Randy?
Yeah, first of all, thank you again for that and being on this committee. I love it all the time when we talk about the CTCs. Last time, Dr. Horstman, your predecessor there, we talk about the state run, and that's a good question Preston brought up. Can you bring us back in the future, the state run, and we also had an overlap of the local area vocational centers? Because we're serving 25,000 as a state run, but there's I think close to almost 100,000 or more
over
with the ACT and the laybacks, and I think that's very important for others besides sitting here that's watching virtually, or the others, how many kids we had. Sure. And if we can look at the trend line data from where we were, let's say pre-COVID to after COVID to where we are now, just to see if we got that uptick again. Because, that was the thing that, really sold the legislature the last time on increasing the funding. And as I've said, we got it up to from 40 million to 140 million, but we need to have a inflationary increase in that, because the first year was great. We got all this money, but the equipment's there. But now that equipment is 5 years old again, and if we're not sustaining that over time. So, but I think it was so important to at least Senator McDaniel that we didn't go in and say, here's ACT and here's LAVAC, because he said, I can't understand all that. He can, but I can't understand it. What I want to know is the total number of students that are being in workforce development.
Right.
So it's good to separate them, but it's also good when we go to ask for money, the total numbers, because it was the local laybacks that got us that additional funding the last time.
Right. And I think that's a good point. While this presentation really didn't focus on the dollars,
right.
Before 2022, there was, that pot of money, and I don't even have that in front. I think it was,
About $40
they added
million.
58 million to it. So there was about 12 million that was divided out over what we were labeled as LAVEC. And again, that's an antiquated term. I think we've just about removed it from all legislation. But it was a group, there were some criteria. You had to have at least 5 different programs in your school or in your facility, and then you could apply to be a LAVEC. Well, we got up to about, I want to say 40-ish that were sharing that $12 million. So they weren't getting a very big piece of any pie. Well, then, prior to COVID, really in the late, 2015 forward, career and technical education started becoming a bigger player in the workforce game, we were thrilled. We became part of the accountability mix, and that really elevated. And people, I think from a nationwide perspective, there was a campaign to move it away from the dirty factory setting and just those preconceptions that people had of CTE, and realize that these are professional positions. A doctor is career and technical education, So what happened was then everybody started applying to be a LAVEC. So then we had this wait list that was getting up there, and we just really couldn't bring them into the funding formula because we only had that $12 million. And it was going to get to the point where people were only getting, a few nickels and dimes in order to pull it off. So David Horseman and the staff at the time really made it a concerted effort, went to the General Assembly and said, look, we need more money. This is important. It's our workforce. This is our state. And if we're going to build all of this, we've got to have more money invested in career and tech ed. So in 2022, they increased it by, I think, $58 million and put us up to $70 million. And what that did was fund every CTE program in the state. So when that hit, then those LAVECs, the term went away because they're going to get funded regardless of how many CTE programs they have in their building. But now what's happened since then, that really, and you're right, when that funding came along, they were able to buy the needed equipment that they had because it was so far outdated. You couldn't say that you were training students on equipment that was aligned to the current
1950s.
standard. So they got the money. But what happened, there's always unintended consequences to the way these things play out. The budget bill of last year, we got this new funding formula put together. So now the reimbursement is based on weighted full-time equivalent enrollments, and it's 60%. And then 40% of their allotments come from high-quality indicators. The ATCs were left out of that formula. So what has now happened is that if you look at the weighted FTE piece of it by itself, and remember, that's only 60% of the 70 million pot, local districts or local programs are getting like $1,400 for each weighted FTE, plus the incentive money that they're earning from high quality. And the ATC FTE amount is somewhere a little above 500. So now we're really struggling to keep the ATCs funded. Now our hope is that next year we'll be able to get that budget language changed so that and hopefully they'll be able to add to that pot, because that's not equality for all students. Every student in Kentucky needs access to the same high quality resources. It shouldn't matter where you're taking your training, if it's in a locally operated center school or if you're in a state operated center. Those kids are still Kentucky kids and they need the same instruction.
Right,
Yes.
and prior to Secretary Link in that taking over, it was the problem is ATCs were shifted between workforce development and back to the Kentucky Department of Education for the rest of those, and because of that, that's where that funding gap has come apart. That we put ATCs back in there, but it wasn't fully integrated back into there, and it was kept separate.
Secretary Link,
Just a couple of comments. First, Dr. Hargis, thank you and your team. We love CTE. And I think, and you said the word, I think, far too often I think we talk about cost instead of investment. I think investing in CTE should be our message. If we want to continue robust economic development, we can't afford not to invest in career and technical education. So I think that's an important distinction, at least in my mind. And secondly, and I don't know if it's still true, you talked about the perception before that manufacturing and some other trades and professions are considered, dirty or whatever. And I think educating parents that there are great careers through CTE that are available to students. They don't have to go to, we certainly want them to go on post-secondary education. But what is really post-secondary education? Is it a 4-year degree? Is it a 2-year degree? Or is it a credential?
Yes.
Or a certificate?
Yes.
So it's all post-secondary education in my mind. So I think educating parents that there are good career pathways for young people outside of going to, and Dr. Todd, don't throw anything at me, going to a 4-year institution. And they may go to a 4-year institution later.
Absolutely.
Once they get into the workforce and they can either afford it or they see another career pathway that takes them to a 4-year institution. There's just, the norm is not the norm anymore. And there are multiple pathways for young people to pursue different careers and then change direction as they learn more, as they mature more. And I think that's and the engagement of business and industry in this whole equation, because I think we're educating people to meet the demands of employers. So that's kind of the SWOT philosophy, is what do the employers need and how are we as a workforce system meeting the employer's needs? And it could be everything from the medical field, doctors, nurses, techs, to manufacturing, to whatever else it is.
Yes.
I have just one quick comment, and the beautiful thing about being commissioner is traveling this great Commonwealth and seeing some of the great things that's going on. And one of the things that I want to emphasize is our districts are seeing the importance of careers. And so much so, even in the design of our buildings now, if you look at different buildings and how they're designed, it's not just this is the area for nursing. It's not only that, it may be a lab setting here, but this is the science class that's connected to it. This is the English class that's to it, so they can help write lab reports. They're designing things around making sure that there's a full experience in that one area. Christian County, Warren County. Went to Warren County, and their new Impact Center has in the center of it, they have a conference room essentially where they're going to have their boardrooms, but it's also designed for their drones. So they can fly drones and have competitions within, but right off to the side is where their science, the science behind that would be taught. So it's the designs of the buildings are showing the importance that our school systems are seeing in career technical, and whether it be, if you're going to go into the medical field, whether it be nursing, doctors, or whether you're going into welding or anything else, the design, even down to the design of our buildings, is changing because of the importance that our local communities are seeing in the career and moving forward, making everything a relevant opportunity for kids. So it's something that it opens my eyes each and every day to the importance that our districts are putting on this as we move forward, as they should.
So I want to thank Dr. Hargis for this report and the board for this really engaging discussion, even with the discussions about our budget priorities pending. And I'm going to ask that Dr. Pate come to the table or sit there and give us an update on a new venture, a new perspective, a project that says, let's dare to imagine transforming the high school experience so that students are meeting certainly credentialing standards and qualifications for graduation, but also a future that is that may impact that high school experience because they can begin now. If we were going to be deliberate about that, what would we do? It's an effort that I say is essential if we are going to deliver on the aspiration to provide a vibrant learning experience for all students. Justin?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. And you are absolutely correct. These items do really go together. I think even the strategic plan item may very well be impacted and have an impact on this work. But Chair Robinson reached out to me a little while back because apparently she knows some people in D.C. But
And some I
NASB
don't know, okay?
Yeah, well, okay. Some former folks from DC, influencers. Anyway, NASB has provided an opportunity for some states to jump into a national network for transforming high school experience, basically. And it's really about reforming the high school experience. So getting the state boards involved is critical in this work. So I'll tell you just, I'll kind of do a whole here, but you know, really what this is about is trying to make a more relevant and engaging experience for all high school students. And that's a big lift, but I really believe it is possible. It's going to require us to step back from some of our norms in this, and that's really tough because pointing the finger right at me, a lot of us woke up one morning, went to school at 5 years old, and we never stopped until we retired. Right? That's what we knew. It's what we know. And education is important, and we believe it to be important, but when I was an English teacher, my job as I saw it was to prepare my students for the next course. And I did not pass them if they could not be demonstrating knowledges that would allow them to pass the next course. And that was the most important role I had as an educator. Then I get on the football field and I try to teach them about life, not just football. But, you know, when I got in that classroom, it was about the next class. I never really tried to connect them with the future. Never knew to. That's what my experience was. Why did I get an associate degree? So I could get a bachelor's degree. Why did I get a bachelor's degree? So I could get a master's degree. I got the master's degree so I could keep my teaching job. You know, it was about the education. When ultimately I got a job as a principal at an ATC. I'm going to leave out a lot of the meat of this story, but I'll just tell you where I got there. Well, prior to that, I was an assistant principal at this same high school that I had been at, and you know, I had discipline. That was my job, so I did a lot of discipline. I was suspending a lot of kids. And I took this principal's job at the ATC, and those same kids that I was suspending from the high school were my absolute best students, hard workers. Academic proficiency being demonstrated every day at the ATC. Well, that's the power of engagement and relevance. They saw the relevance, so they were engaged in the classroom. Heck, I found out that a lot of these kids I was suspending the year before would drive themselves to the ATC on a suspended day to be there. They weren't supposed to, and I didn't know that, but I loved them even more for it. But all these years later, and as I have become, you know, different roles in education, that has always stuck with me. And I feel like if we're going to take on some challenges, let's take on that challenge of how do we make the entire educational experience for them as engaging, maybe not as, but at least supporting the engagement that they feel with what they see as relevant. But I don't know that we always do that. We set a lot of curricular designs for curriculum, not necessarily for engagement, but then we wonder about chronic absenteeism. So, you know, I think we do have some metrics that we can use chronic absenteeism, because if we do some of this work correctly, we should see chronic absenteeism go down. You know, so it could become a metric of success based on engagement. So I'm going to try to give you the high-level version here because we haven't started a lot of this yet. But I think it's the potential to have a massive impact is here. And this is something I've not seen in my career. And I'm very thankful to Sharon for, you know, giving me a chance to be involved with this. What I really am seeing here is a chance for us as a committee and us as a board to look at the alignment of the educational experience that we are providing for our Kentucky high school students. That alignment piece is going to be the key for relevance that they see with their educational experience. And if we can align our programs and our communities and our careers with what we're providing in the classroom, I believe more students will be engaged in it. And if they're engaged, then they will be active and they will be stronger participants, ultimately leading to the success of them and their communities. So what I am talking about, and Glyptosan deserves a shout out at the beginning, middle, and end of this little dryad here, but she's keeping me and Robbie straight. But what we're really working on, Robbie and Glyptosan, is looking at data so we really understand where is the Kentucky labor market and what are the requirements of those jobs. And then when we start looking at that, are we providing a relevant curriculum and education that aligns with what these kids see in Kentucky in our regions? Or are we just being a little too ethereal? And I'll, you know, the mantra we have thrown around for a while, it's not a bad one, I don't know if it's the best one, is college or career ready. It's what we've shot, you know, for our youth. Either going to be college or career ready. We've even got some bullet points that indicate which one of those you are. All right, but we all know that career ready requires, in a lot of cases, some level of college up to a PhD. All right, there's to be career ready. College is entwined in that. Well, what do we go to college for? I don't care what college you're going to or what job you're seeing, there's a career at the end of that. So what is this college or career ready? You know, so we're just going to have to unhook on some things and look at this blankly, because what basically NASB has given us is a chance to say, if you could build the most engaging platform for students in high school education pathways, what would it look like? So we got a chance to do that. So I'll get to the committee, because I think that's one of the really exciting parts. I think we have a tremendous committee. I think Dr. Fletcher and I have pulled in about every favor we've got, but we've built a committee that could be impactful enough to do something with this. So we're going to start with a lot of data mining, and then we're going to get this committee together after April 28th. April 28th is the first official meeting of this group in Indianapolis, Indiana, and then after that we're going to get the committee together. The committee is myself and Dr. Young as representatives of the board, Dr. Fletcher, of course, to represent KDE, Glyptosan to keep us all straight. And from K-12, we got Jesse Bacon from Bullitt County Schools, superintendent out there, fine man, and Robert Moore, who is the chief of schools from Fayette County.
Jefferson.
Jefferson County. So we've got some people with some good broad-based educational experience from K-12. And then Aaron Thompson or Amanda Ellis, one of those two from CPE. Chris Sanders is going to represent Secretary Link, and then Senator Givens and Representative Tipton, who are both chairs of education committees. And you know, they've got some good knowledge and good ideas. So getting them connected was, I think, key for this work, because Robbie and I and Sharon, we didn't just want this committee to be a good idea generator. We wanted this to be a committee who would also take some ownership in making some of these things happen. All right, so these are very influential legislators. Ashley Watts from the Kentucky Chamber, because again, if we're going to start from the business world workforce perspective, having Jamie and Ashley involved are critical to this. And then Jacqueline Coleman, Lieutenant Governor Jacqueline Coleman is going to be a part of this committee. Of course, her education history is well documented. She's passionate about this, but again, she has some influence to help us drive some things should recommendations come forth. So where we are right now is we've got a survey out there. You all have this. Dr. Fletcher and I have shared with some other folks to try to get some input. We're looking at some data. Ashley Watts is going to help us pull some data. May talk to you, Secretary, about getting some labor market data.
Absolutely.
But we're really just kind of building the preparation for the next steps of this committee to step out and do its work. We've got a chance to change the landscape a little bit. And I'll have to say, it's pretty exciting to be a part of it. But Glyptosan, is there anything? Oh, wait a minute. And thank you, Glyptosan. Missed one. I tried to get 3. I only got 2 thank yous to Glyptosan. But you want to add anything in some of the meetings that we've sat in with the NASB folks?
Just that the work is beginning, and it looks like a 2-year cycle is all I would add.
Okay, yeah, that's right, that's right. Yeah.
How many states, do we have the list of states that are involved?
6 states and
6 states. We were invited as one of 6, and so very thankful for that.
So I'm going to open it up to you all, see if there's anything that you wanted to add.
I just want to say to the board, if you think accountability is hard,
Try high schools.
try high school transformation, but you gotta go where the action is. And we feel that the high school transformation question gives us an opportunity to look at lots of different connections into the academy, into the workforce, into workforce development, and into a very important segment of the population. I mean, I've been reading a lot about the Gen Zers and how it's kind of like bifurcated. It's big and it's bifurcated. You got older ones and you got younger ones. And there are emerging interests and dynamics in each of those populations. So I think whole child is even on the table here. Because you got to understand the learner if you're going to serve them and help them build a vision of the future that they're going to create for us of the beloved community. So I see
learning
this
the
work.
community.
And exactly.
You know, that's
exactly.
If only 10% of our jobs require a depth of understanding of algebraic equations, but we're requiring 90% of our students to, I'm sorry, I always pick on the math people, English guy, sorry, it's going to happen.
What
But,
is a polynomial?
Well.
I'm going to get hate mail. I'm just kidding. I'm
Sorry,
just
you
kidding.
asked.
I'm just
Well,
kidding.
and I'll turn it back on me. I mean, it's the same thing with English. If really the goal is to teach kids how to communicate and write effectively to communicate in a team, how much of our English curriculum is weighted more toward non-business communication, curricular items? But again, I don't think that should be a discussion of, well, here's what I think, or here's what, Steve thinks. What does the data on the Kentucky labor market tell us? Where are the jobs in Kentucky? Because ultimately, I mean, that's what we're trying to put kids through Kentucky schools to get Kentucky jobs. And that's what they see. So when they don't see relevance in what they're learning with what is available to them, there's the disconnect. So that's the piece to me is, and I will quit using disciplinary examples on this. I'm going to get emails from both my English colleagues and my math enemies. But just trying to make a relevant point. Kids find relevance in what they see relevant. And I think too many times we expect them to see what we saw because we clearly see the benefit. But we need to start from more of a data-minded approach of what is there, what does that mean for us as we shape pathways, because we don't want to set the bar low for our students, but we need to set the bar appropriately for what we have in the Commonwealth of Kentucky for them to enter into. And there's a broad array. So I think that's where we've just got to step back and take a look at this is a chance for us to learn from other states, to see what we can do. Then we talk about what we should do.
Thank you, Chair Robinson. When we were asked if we want to be a part of this, the goal, and I looked at the goals of the High School Transformation Network, and I want to read those to you very quickly. First, establishing a collaborative network of state teams made up of state boards of education, state policymakers in higher education and workforce development, and students and school leaders. 2, enhancing state policymakers' understanding of the policies and implementation of practices that facilitate or impede high school transformation. 3, improving alignment across education and workforce sectors and enable local innovation in the best interest of students. And 4, positioning state boards to enable change in their states and develop policies based on evidence-based practices and diverse stakeholder feedback. That sounds like vibrant learning, innovation, and collaboration to me. So once you read what was the points and what they were asking us to be a part of with these other states, it was, first of all, it was an honor to be asked, but also 2, it aligns perfectly with our 3 big ideas as we move forward. And if our presentation on the local accountability, it aligns with what we just talked about before. So we have an opportunity to lead work nationwide and also learn from others. So this is a great opportunity for us.
I really appreciate that wavelength. I'm there too. To me, this feels like the natural iteration, next step for us from Kentucky United We Learn to take a look at that kind of hard nut to crack at the high school transformation level. And I think a lot of what we've learned through Kentucky United We Learn, as it has informed this board moving forward, will apply. I really wish Justin were more passionate about the work, but he agreed to chair it. So I'm just really excited for what that portends for us, and would put in a plug I've mentioned to the commissioner before that would really love to go back to Kentucky United We Learn folks and say, hey, here's where we are, and can you support us moving forward in high school transformation? Maybe just help. Let's galvanize that work that's already underway and enlist their service in this process as well.
Well, I think that's a logical extension too,
I do too.
because Chair Robinson knows, but it was because of a lot of that work that Kentucky was invited to be a part of this.
Exactly.
So that's key.
Yeah.
Plus Diane's work on principal pipeline collaborative with NASB. A lot of these things are really coalescing perfectly. Pardon me, Randy.
No, I was just going to say, I think the last statement was the most powerful of all. It's the work we've been doing, and the L3s have been doing it. And I would just say to the committee, besides having to go out to other states and see, we need to make sure the committee is seeing a lot of the great things that's going on in Kentucky before we go out and see others, because you're going to be very impressed that when you do that, you're going to say these 13 districts are doing what you are seeing in other places, because sometimes we always have to go somewhere else to see the great work we're doing here after we come back and realize what it's being. And, this is what I stated last year, when whatever group we bring in to help us on some of the assessment would always talk about, you got to see these other schools. And my question is when are we going to start holding up our own schools as the models? And I would say for that committee, you need to visit those L3. If you haven't been to all the L3 districts and see the transformation, you need to do that before you go out. Because I'll tell you, Young Zhao, for example, has visited, who is the leader on world-class education and innovation, has talked about 2 or 3 schools in Kentucky that outshine everything else that the networks are saying. So the key is sustainability of that network. Mm-hmm. We have it in the 13. We just got to then, of all the stuff that NASB says here is just, written from a lot of the work from United We Learn and that we have. And I would just say, make sure you visit those 13 L3 districts before we start talking about what someone else does in another state.
And that's why I put out the word lead. I think we have an opportunity to lead the work.
I agree.
Now, of course, learn, but also too, we have a great opportunity to lead this work on a national scale.
Because I will tell you in that the early work in this area, that we went out and visited 10 different leading school districts in the country, and those L3 with Next Gen and those things like that has come back and built our version, the global way, Kentucky's way, and in most of those cases outshine those others. We have in the neighborhood of 5,000 to 10,000 people that come into Kentucky to see what we're doing in those L3. So please see those in addition to going outside. Because when you say merging high schools and college, the early college high school model, I can tell you that, or at least Aaron Thompson should tell you this if he hasn't, about the increase in dual credit, and that's what that's all about. I think from the last report that he said to us in Northern Kentucky, at least, that Kentucky is leading the way in dual credit, and that's blurring those 11 through 13 lines. So
I just need a bit of clarification, Chair Robinson and Vice Chair Young. Didn't you say that we were requested to be a part of this study because of what we are doing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're going to be sharing with them what we are doing, not going to ask them what they are doing.
Both.
Both.
Absolutely.
But
I'm
the
saying,
the
right.
point of it, most of it, the time will be spent in sharing exactly what we're doing with them. Because that's the reason they ask us, one of 6.
Yeah,
You're doing some great things.
I think that they were looking for folks that were not just thinking on this as a good idea and maybe, I mean, because this is work that, well, you know the complexity of the assignment. And so they have seen us do complex things.
Yes.
They have been here with their national meeting, and they've learned a lot about what Kentucky is doing on the question of accountability and assessment. I mean, there was a time when you didn't even want to have to say the 2 A words, right? Because it was just so complex and so contentious. We have turned accountability into a tool of getting things done and moving in the direction of student learning. Now we're going to look at an institution called the high school that brings back all kinds of memories in our thinking around this table that we need to put in a treasure chest and lock it up. Because we now need to think about the way it needs to become to be of service to the students that are coming. That is a different perspective, and we get an opportunity to ask those questions with others who are willing to do so in a disciplined context that is multifaceted and I would say among the most important questions that we have. If we don't ask that question and move in the direction of well-articulated answers, we will watch yet another institution become irrelevant. And students attend because they must comply rather than essential to the future they want to have for themselves, their families, and their community. So let's get ready for the future. I know we're way over time, but I'm as passionate as just
For sure.
Is there something that, this is all pretty new to me, I didn't know about the 6 choices. Is there something you could send to us so we could read about what this is all about?
Yes.
I've been asleep at the wheel or whatever.
No,
but
it is new.
It's
It is
pretty
new. I mean,
new.
this was
Yeah.
an invitation that was directed to 6 states.
Press release or something that would say that, because it's nice to be asked.
Has that gone out
We
yet,
haven't-
Mr. Sand?
I don't think we've done that yet.
I thought we did.
I think it's released. I don't know if we have internally, because this, like, the first kickoff meeting was after our last board meeting. So this is really the first time that we've got to share in this
Right,
setting.
right, yeah.
So, I mean, it's pretty new.
Yeah.
So let's put an info
Chair-
packet
Chair-
together for our colleagues. Yes, please, Dr.
Chair
Brown.
Robinson, just if I could just chime in, and I know we're over the time, but I would be neglecting my duty as the champion for the arts. And I commend all of the work that we're doing on here, but I would also encourage that while we're looking at those high school transformation plans, that I've never been afraid to say the 2 A's, but I consider the 2 A's as performing arts and the fine arts, and that we understand that we do want to look to make sure that things are essential and that we're getting student voice, not necessarily to comply with pathways, and when we're looking at those pathways, but that we ensure that we're looking at developing pathways that towards jobs that also include student interests that are not of those main categories. Sometimes we neglect the arts in favor of the other core contents, and whereas those sometimes can be more attainable, sometimes we're pushing students into a arena of just doing them to comply, not necessarily because they want to. I mean, I see it every day here where I'm at, that students are just like, well, I have to choose something, so I guess I'm going to do HVAC because I have to graduate, and they say I have to do something, but they have no passion for that, and they don't try there. So in a sense, we set them up for failure because what they're interested in is in essence HVAC, but more towards a different field that we don't give them the choice. So I just encourage that when we're in those discussions that we always look of how do we create a better, well-rounded community, the workforce, because when these major jobs come to a community or a state, sometimes they're looking also for vibrant art communities as well, so that they can have a whole community and a whole rounded workforce as well.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, that's an excellent question you said. I mean, that's where, when you look at some of these L3 schools that's doing this work, arts is a primary foundation of all that, because the majority is about design, and the design of that comes through the arts and sciences. As you will see, some of these students, as was mentioned earlier, through the arts and through the illustration of writing books and making books and selling them online, or selling their paintings, or making their music on their different podcasts and their things. So I think that's, a very fundamental part of transformation. It's, if I'm an Art 4 student, why am I an Art 4 student? You've got to build that particular part in there. You want them to be an Art 4 student so that they can go on. Because if you look at the greater Cincinnati area, one of the highest things is in design work for Fortune 100 companies that are located there. And if they don't know three-dimensional art, for example, they can't do the other type of work. So arts is a very important component of the transformation. It's just how do we utilize the arts so that you can become a better, well-rounded student and understand the design. You can't do design work without understanding basic fundamentals of art. I mean, that's where the key comes into play. And that's why I say we got some great schools in Kentucky that's doing that work, and we got to go see it.
Well, we bring treasures to the task that will inform us in the creation of even more treasures. I thank you for this really rich discussion. It's been a very productive meeting today. I really haven't, it's like, oh, this has been kind of fun, even though we're over schedule. I apologize. But I'd like now to entertain a motion to adjourn. Yes, Steve. Thank you. Is
I
there
will
a
second that motion.
Thank you.
I've been meeting since 7:30 this morning.
Let me call the question. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
If there are any nays, let me hear it. I dare you. Thank you so much, board. It's been a great day.